How's everybody doing today? If it's early or late, wherever you're at, hope everybody's having a great morning or evening or a late night, wherever you're at in the world. We've got a lot to talk about today. We've got a lot of updates. There's so much misinformation going on about the various cases. I felt like we had to do a space to talk about it. I was in a space yesterday and it seemed like everyone in this space had no idea what was going on with the case. Was it dismissed? Was it not dismissed? Were charges dismissed? Had they been exonerated? Were they acquitted? Is Andrew Tate running for the prime minister of England? Right? There's so much going on. They don't know about extradition. We're going to cover all of that today. Then we're going to bring people up. We're going to talk about this, answer questions, and I just want to say that the Tate brothers and their accomplices have denied all charges against them. Moving forward, of course, everything is allegedly for legal purposes. But as we're having a conversation, I might not say that just because it's conversational. So I just wanted to get that out of the way. Okay. Was Andrew Tate's case dismissed? Absolutely not. It was not dismissed. And we're going to get into the details right here in a second. And I'm going to bring a couple more speakers up here. 1 second here. It was not dismissed, and as you can see, if you go down into the comments, I saw somebody posting some of the fact-checking websites that have looked into this as well. So, what happened? First of all, the brothers have lied to you. Their entire PR network has lied to you, telling you that the case was dismissed and they've been exonerated and their names are cleared. That didn't happen at all. So, what did happen was the trial was originally ordered by a preliminary chamber judge. The preliminary chamber judge reviewed all of the evidence to ensure that it was collected legally and in accordance with Romanian law. And that judge said, "We're ready to go to trial." That judge ordered the trial. Now, it was within the rights, the Tate brothers' rights, to appeal that decision. Every decision made in Romania, unless it's made by an appeals judge, can be appealed by the defendants. That includes house arrest, judicial control, um, whatever's going to happen to the case, going to trial, etc. Every single decision can be appealed, or rather, a request to be appealed, unless it's an appeal decision itself. Those are final. So, within his rights, their rights, the Tate brothers appealed the decision to go to trial, while simultaneously telling everyone that they can't wait to go to trial to prove their innocence. But they stopped the trial from happening. That took, I don't have the calendar in front of me, I believe it was a 6 or 7 month delay that appeal process caused. Then appellate judges had to review the case. The case is already approved to go to trial. There are two appellate judges that review the case, and what they found were a couple of irregularities and four statements that needed to be removed from the file. So let's talk about those. They found very specifically three irregularities and four statements. Now, those statements were due to procedural errors, and we're going to get into all this in a second. But before we do, it's important to understand that irregularities and procedural errors have nothing to do with the quality of the evidence, fabricated evidence, or lack of evidence. That's what you've read online. It means that the indictment was written with a couple of T's not being crossed and a couple of I's were not dotted. That's it. Everything that the brothers have been saying about the case and the evidence and how it's all been fabricated, it's a lie. All of it. That's why they won't back up anything they say with documentation. They won't link out to anything that documents that they've been exonerated or that the case has even been dismissed. My latest post before I posted this is I bring to everyone's attention that Tristan has been quoting a news source. If you go to my feed and you look at it, it's probably the top one underneath the space here, where Tristan keeps sharing a headline that says decision in the trial of the Tate brothers accused of rape and human trafficking. And he shares this quote, there was never enough evidence. So if you look at that, and he keeps sharing this to make it look like it was a judicial decision, like a judge said there was never enough evidence. But go down to the next post underneath that, and I quoted the source, Tristan Tate himself made that quote. He said, if there's not enough evidence to go to trial after all these years, that means, and here's where the quote came in, there was never enough evidence in the first place. So this article quoted him, and he's sharing this article to make it look like a judge made the quote. And I've linked the source. Go look for it yourself. Look for it's going to be the first post underneath this space. and I link to the source in the second one. It's translated for you and everything. It's originally in Romania. I translated it to English through Google Translate, and you can click on it and go read that yourself. So they're deceiving people left and right on this. Okay, so let's talk about the issues that they were found. The four statements that were removed, four statements, that's it, out of all of the evidence that was collected. And their case file consists of nearly 75,000 pages. And out of those 75,000 pages, the majority of it is actual evidence, evidence against them. And it's very clearly detailed in their indictment. Every single journal, there's 75 journals. Each journal carries, I think it's around 1,000 pages. Each one is very clearly written, and it says what's inside of it. So the majority of them, we know what they are, and it's actual evidence. So out of all of that, four statements were removed. Two of those statements belong to Andrew and Tristan themselves. Why were those statements removed? They were removed because when Andrew and Tristan Tate originally gave their statements to the authorities, they were still considered witnesses in the case. They had not yet been moved to defendants. So in Romanian law, you can't use your own witness statements against you when you're a defendant in a case. So when they were moved from witness status to defendants, those two statements had to be removed. That was a procedural error. So they're gone. Now, when they go to trial, they can give those statements again, or they can plead the fifth. They can choose not to give a statement that's within their rights as well. But those two initial statements were removed because they were given too early while they were classified as witnesses. Now, what about the other two statements? The other two statements belong to two specific victims, an American victim and a Moldovan victim. These two particular victims gave two sets of statements each. They gave an original statement to DCOT, which is the authority there that handles human trafficking, drug trafficking, terrorism, etc. They gave their statements to DCOT, and those statements remain intact. Those were not ordered to be removed. However, there was a second set of statements given in what's called a special anticipated hearing. The reason they had a special anticipated hearing is because those two victims were not Romanian and they were scheduled to leave Romania. They wanted to get the hell out of Dodge. They wanted to get out of Romania. They wanted to leave. So the special anticipated hearing was held in front of a judge. So the statement that they gave in front of the judge was to be their testimony during the trial in the event that they could not participate in the trial because they were not going to be in Romania. So, as such, the Tate brothers, their legal team, should have had an opportunity to cross-examine them. They didn't. The girls left. They didn't have a chance to cross-examine those victims. Because of that, that's another procedural error, and those statements had to be removed. So out of all of the evidence in the case, every single thing that was collected, that's evidence, those four statements were the only pieces of evidence that were removed, and that's why they were removed. That's it. So when you hear people talking about there wasn't enough evidence, the evidence was fabricated, it's completely false. And I've documented all this stuff on my timeline. Oh, and I also link out to the judicial websites in Romania. The Bucharest court has two websites where they have judicial decisions and more in-depth decisions that they'll post. And I share tons of this stuff in my timeline. And those of you who follow me know what I'm talking about. I always source things out. Now let's talk about the three irregularities. This is why it went back to the case was sent back to the ECOT. When the judges, the two appellate judges, found these irregularities, they originally gave DCOT 5 days to fix these. Now, DCOT could have fixed them, or they could have done what they chose to do, which was write to the judges with an explanation of why they believe they don't have to fix these issues. The judges said, nope, we're going to send the entire case file back to you now. You are being forced to fix these. So the three irregularities that were found. Number one, DCOT, when they seized all of their property, all of their cars, all of their assets, they did not attach a value amount to the assets that were being seized. What that means is specifically is DCOT claims that all of the money that the Tate brothers had was earned through money through the crimes that they've been charged with through human trafficking. But they didn't say for how much. They didn't say exactly how much money they've calculated the brothers earned through illegal activities. They also didn't say for each victim that should legally be compensated if the Tate brothers are convicted. Each victim that's called an injured party or a civil party, they are entitled to compensation. They also didn't say how much each one of them is entitled to and why. So they didn't put the numbers together for the assets that were seized, explaining why they took all of their assets. So now what DCOT has to do is they have to put those values to the assets that were seized and justify why everything was seized. If they can't do that, anything that they can't justify will be returned to the brothers. That could be property, that could be jewelry, that could be cars, etc. But they have to justify by value amount why everything was taken. They essentially went in and took everything. There's two different ways to confiscate property in Romania, assets in Romania. And one of them is called extended confiscation. And DCOT claims that they were within their rights to use what's called extended confiscation, which means that they can essentially take everything because it was all earned through ill-gotten money. The judges disagreed, so this has to be corrected. That's the first irregularity. Notice it has nothing to do with evidence, nothing to do with fabricated evidence. It's about attaching values to assets. The second irregularity has to do with the last victim that was added to the case file specifically for Andrew Tate. They added her as the last victim, and Andrew Tate did not have enough time to study the evidence that they collected to form a proper defense. As such, the judges says his right to defense was violated. So they have to correct that. Now, this is where things sort of get tricky. How do you correct something if you didn't give someone enough time to correct them? That means they're going to have to go back as they're rewriting this indictment and give him time to study the evidence that they've collected. But notice there's no fabricated evidence. There's nothing about bad evidence. It's just he wasn't given enough time to form a defense. So his right to defense was violated. And number three, for the irregularities, this has to do with their accomplices, Luana and Georgiana. The judge said that the indictment did not clearly connect Luana and Georgiana to their trafficking charges. What that means is the judge wants to see specifics on the acts, the methods, and the purpose. By that, they mean show us how they recruited them, show us how they transported them, show us how they sheltered them, show us how they deceived them, show us how they committed violence against them, and show them that it was all done for the purpose of sexual exploitation or for labor. The judge wanted to see those dots connected in the indictment. Now, here's where things get kind of tricky. There's a second case, and we're going to get into that here in a moment. But in the second case, Luana and Georgiana, they're not charged with human trafficking directly like they are in the first case. They're charged with complicity to human trafficking or complicity in human trafficking, which means that they are accomplices for human trafficking. So, what I believe, and I'm speculating here, I believe that as the prosecutor is rewriting the first indictment, that their charges could be changed, like it is in the second case, to complicity in human trafficking. So that's what I believe is going to happen if they're unable to connect those dots. And Pax, I'm going to bring you up as a speaker so you can hop in. Pax Wax is a Romanian. He's incredibly knowledgeable about the case. I just sent him an invite. I don't know if he's able to speak or not. And he'll jump in if Romanian law is incredibly confusing. So Pax, if I get something wrong, feel free to hop in and correct me on that. So I believe that they could be charged with complicity in human trafficking instead of actually human trafficking in continued form, which is how they are currently charged in the first case. Okay, now that's it. That's the problem with the first case. That's it. No other issues were found. There was no other issues with evidence. It's not an issue of having enough evidence or the quality of evidence isn't there. All of that is disinformation that's being spread by the Tate brothers. Now, I mentioned two cases. When they were indicted in June of 2023, in their indictment and in DCOT's press release, which is also in my timeline, they mentioned a set of offenses that were being disjoined from the first case. What that means is when DCOT originally arrested the Tate brothers in December 2022 and they placed them under a preventive measure. Preventive measure means At that time, it was a preventive detention. They were in jail for 3 months. House arrest is a preventive measure. Judicial control is a preventive measure. It means that it's kind of like bail in a way. Think of it that way. It's to prevent someone from committing other crimes or prevent them from obstructing justice or prevent them from trying to flee the country, essentially. So they've moved a couple of different preventive measures. They started in preventive detention, then they were under house arrest, then they were under judicial control, which is similar to bail. Now, Andrew has since been put under house arrest again because of the second case. We'll talk about that in a moment. But those are all preventive measures. Now, the prosecutor had 180 days after arresting them and placing them under a preventive measure, had 180 days to indict them. What Romania does is they charge them, they arrest them, they process them, they let them know that they've been charged. And then if they're placed under preventive measure, they have 180 days to indict them. If they do not indict them after 180 days, they have to release them off a preventive measure. And the brothers would have fled. So what DCOT did is DCOT charged them with the charges that they were ready to go with. We're ready to go on these charges, and we're going to disjoin all the other offenses into a new investigation. And that new investigation became the second case. So when you hear all of this information about, oh, they hit us with some new charges that they made up and they're making up these, the first case failed, so they pulled the second case together. No, the second case was announced in June of 2023. We just didn't have the specifics of it until later on, and I covered all of that on my timeline. I covered the second group of offenses back in June of 2023. I've covered that extensively and was laughed at quite a bit over that and called a liar. They tried to have me suspended over spreading misinformation, and we were right. We were right again. So, case number two, let's talk about that. So, they separated those offenses. Now, they have been charged with human trafficking, again, human trafficking in continued form. There are 34 new victims in the second case. There's 7 victims in the first case, 34 victims in the second case for human trafficking, plus one minor who is 15 years old. We'll get to her in a second. There's also a charge for Andrew specifically for trafficking minors. This is for Andrew allegedly trafficking well, he he met her when she was 14 or 15 years old, but the charge is specifically for him putting her on webcam when she was 17 years old. This is the girl you've probably seen, or the woman rather. Her name is Vivian, went by the name of Cobra Tate. She made videos for Andrew saying that he was innocent, etc. She's also the woman who was beaten by a belt and smacked around in the famous Andrew Tate beating a woman video. That was her. And she was probably around 15 or 16 years old at the time he was beating her in that video. Of course, she came out and said it was consensual, but she was a minor at the time. So minors cannot give consent to such abuse. Now, he's been charged formally for trafficking her and putting her on webcam as a 17-year-old child. The webcam company is My Free Cams. They are cooperating with the authorities, and they have confirmed when that account was created and when she was working there. And it was when she was 17 years old. Her home country has confirmed her age. So all of the misinformation out there about, oh, she's 33 years old now, she couldn't have possibly been, all of that is wrong. Her home country has confirmed her age with Romania. It's in the document. It's a done deal. It's a done deal. And when it comes to human trafficking specifically, when someone is under the age of 18, you don't have to actually commit fraud, force, deception, etc. All you have to do is perform an act. Okay, if you look up in the nest, look up at the top, I've got a chart up there. This is what a prosecutor needs to prosecute for human trafficking. And this is how crimes are viewed, the lens that crimes are viewed through when someone is charged with human trafficking. If someone is over the age of 18, you need an action, which could be recruitment, transportation, transfer, harboring, or receiving, or sheltering. You need a means, which is deception, fraud, coercion, threats of violence, abuse of power, etc. And you need a purpose, and the purpose is always going to be some form of exploitation. In this case, it's going to be forced labor and commercial sex work. This is for when somebody's over the age of 18. But when someone is under the age of 18, all you need is an action and a purpose. So in this situation where he allegedly trafficked a 17-year-old into pornography, essentially, because that's what webcam is. She's performing sex acts on webcam. If they can prove that he either recruited her, transported her, or sheltered her, that's one or the other. You don't have to do all of these, just choose one. If they can prove that he sheltered her, or transported her, or recruited her for the purpose of sexual exploitation, which would be putting her on webcam, he will be convicted of trafficking a minor. That's going to be a pretty open and closed case. Now, Tristan Tate, his brother, doesn't currently have a charge of trafficking in minors in the second case. However, they do implicate him and said that he transported her. So it's possible that he could also be charged with trafficking in minors specifically for her, because they said that he was transporting her back and forth at that time. So that's a possibility. Moving on from that, sexual intercourse with a minor, sex acts with a minor. This particular minor was 15 years old at the time, and I'm going to call it rape because minors cannot give consent. Statutory rape is what it is. Andrew Tate put her up in an apartment. He anally raped her, orally raped her, and he got caught. And not only did he get caught, but he also got caught trying to bribe her to lie to the police. He bought her a second phone because he knew they were going to search her phone and get the chat messages that he sent her, voice messages, etc. So he bought her a phone and he tried to bribe her to lie to the police. He agreed to pay her 5,000 euros, but Andrew Tate, being Andrew Tate, he only paid her half. He only paid her half of the money that he agreed to pay her. And Decot actually got access to her full phone, so they have all of the information where he tried to bribe her. He tried to bribe a 15-year-old, a girl that he raped when she was 15 years old, to lie to the police so he would not get into trouble, but they caught him. Because of that, he's also picked up an additional charge of influencing statements. Influencing statements is the same as witness tampering. The Tate brothers have both been charged with influencing statements because I don't have it in front of me, but there are 5 or 6 different people, and I believe 5 of them are victims in the case where they have been caught trying to bribe them, intimidate them, threaten them, and pressure them to either lie to the police, to withdraw their statements, or to not cooperate with the police. Because of this, both brothers have picked up an additional charge of influencing statements. So when you're seeing some of these victims come out and say, oh, the Tate brothers have never done anything wrong, I'm not a victim, there's a really good chance that they've been threatened, bribed, or pressured to say that. They've already been caught doing it to several victims already. We also know that there's going to be a tax fraud charge. Romania is claiming that they did not pay taxes on the equivalent of 6 million US dollars. And due to the amount, the minimum charge for this, I believe, is 7 years in prison. The minimum charge. So if they're convicted, the minimum punishment is 7 years in prison. Regardless of what happens in Romania, first case, second case, it doesn't matter. When they are either acquitted, which isn't going to happen, but let's just say for the sake of argument, they are. When they are either acquitted or they serve their jail term and their jail term is finished, they will immediately be arrested again and held up for 30 days while Romania prepares them for extradition to the UK for another case of rape and human trafficking. This is for both Tate brothers. This is not an old case that's been reopened, as the Tate brothers have said. This is a new criminal case in the UK for both brothers. We know there's at least 21 incidents of rape and human trafficking, and we know there's at least 3 victims involved. We don't know much beyond that. There's also a UK civil case where 4 victims are accusing Andrew specifically of raping them. We're probably going to get a trial date for that sometime this year, probably sooner than later. Between all of the cases so far that we know about, total victim count, there are 49 confirmed victims between all of the cases, but there's an additional 12 that one of these documents lists that are currently under investigation. They may or may not be added to the case, the second case. So if the 12 are added on top of the 49, there are 61 alleged victims between all of the cases between the Tate brothers, and 3 of them were minors at the time. 2 of them, 2 of the minors were specifically for trafficking, and 1 of them were sex acts with a minor. The brothers had a UK tax evasion civil case recently, and they lost their civil case. They didn't even put up a defense. They didn't even try to fight it. They offered no evidence in their favor. They lost their tax evasion case after telling everyone, of course, we paid our taxes. This is a matrix attack. They didn't even put up a defense. I've linked to the official document on that in my timeline as well. And the UK seized nearly, I believe it was £3 million in unpaid taxes. Now let's move on to their assets real quick. I'm almost through all of this and we can start having a discussion. So if you want to speak, if you have questions, something to add, go ahead and raise your hand. I'm going to start bringing people up here shortly. So let's talk about their assets, because they also put out a lot of wrong information saying they got all of their assets back, which of course was another lie. They did get some assets back. They did get a couple of cars released. No property, no jewelry. There were a couple of cars that were released, and I can't get a solid answer on this yet, but I believe it's somewhere between 7 and 9 vehicles were released. DCOT seized 16 cars and 1 motorcycle for the second case specifically, and somewhere between 7 and 9 cars were released because they were not in the Tate brothers' name. I'm going to put a direct quote from their lawyer up in the nest. You can see this yourself. Scroll over there. He says, "My clients had possession of the cars based on rental contracts. If the rightful owners terminate the rental contracts, they will be sent to them. If they do not terminate, they follow their path and keep possession." This is from one of the Romanian lawyers. It's a direct quote from the lawyers. So the only cars that were released belong to other people. The Tate brothers had rental contracts on some of these cars, and we know at least 4 of the vehicles belong to their friends. Now, for those of you who are saying, well, the Tates are so smart, they're brilliant. Of course, they put everything in their name or in other people's name because that's how they do things to protect themselves. So the list of automobiles from the first case, I just put up in the nest as well. And you can see that those are in their names or they're in their actual company names, such as Talisman Enterprises. These are not vehicles that are owned by other people. So this wasn't a masterful move of the brothers just putting things in other people's name. What happened was the brothers had all of their assets seized from the first case. So then when they got cars, they didn't have anything left. They took them all. I think they took everything except for Tristan's Lada for the first case. So they went out and rented new cars, knowing that DCOT could not indefinitely take them if they seized them again for the second case, that they knew was coming. So first case assets were in their name or the company that they controlled. Second group of assets for the cars that were released were in other people's names. That's why they were released. So everything that you've read and everything that you've said about the brothers getting all their assets back, that's also a lie. Now, the brothers are trying to do something right now. They just tried to do it and it was kicked down to a different judge. Because the file from the first case was sent back to the prosecutor, that means that judges have to change due to jurisdiction. Previously, a preliminary chamber judge was making all of the decisions, but now because the case went back to the prosecutor, a judge for, I believe it's called Rights and Liberties judge, has to make those decisions. And what the brothers are trying to do, they're trying to do a couple of things, but one of them is really clever. Because the cars are movable assets and they're depreciating assets, the brothers are trying to get custody of the cars so they can maintain the cars. Pax's hand went up. He's probably going to correct me. Pax, go ahead, man.
Yeah, thanks. So yeah, that is a trick where they're saying because the cars are not used, they are getting damaged and they lose value. But I've seen that this month is probably the DCOT prosecutors. Unfortunately, I'm not a judicial professional, and I don't know very much about it. But my I'm thinking that the prosecutors had asked if those assets are going to depreciate, let's sell them. So now there is, regarding the assets, there is a court hearing about selling some of the assets. So because the prosecutor saw that they are trying to obtain temporary custody of the cars because they are getting devaluated. The prosecutor said probably asked, okay, if the assets are getting devaluated, let's sell it now, and we'll keep on the money obtained from the sale of those assets.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. So DCOT is wanting to sell some of the depreciating assets, and the Tate brothers are saying, "Well, let us take custody of these. To sell them, we can maintain them. DCOT will still control them. DCOT can choose to sell them if they want." The whole idea of the assets is, number one, they were gained illegally through illegal money. Number two, to pay for the investigation if the brothers are convicted, and to pay any of the victims who are seeking compensation if the brothers are convicted. So there's kind of a race for this, and I don't know how this is going to play out. But rest assured, if they are able to take custody of the vehicles, they're going to spin that into massive, massive disinformation, talking about, oh, the case is over again. We got all of our assets back again. And that's simply not the case. That their own house, the property that they are living in, because DCOT didn't just take their cars, they also took all of their property in Romania. The actual house that they are living in, DCOT is allowing them to live in that house. They're allowing them to stay in that house. DCOT can sell that house if they're convicted. So the similar thing is going to happen with the cars if they're given the cars. Personally, I don't think it's right for DCOT to sell the cars. I think because these are sports cars, where some of them are worth hundreds of thousands of dollars or maybe millions of dollars. If the brothers can maintain them until they're convicted, I mean, I think that's fair. But just be warned that if they do get these back, there's going to be a massive disinformation campaign around this. So heads up on that. Now, moving on to um, what's a third case in Romania. And this one is fuzzy. We don't know yet if this is ongoing or if it's been dismissed, but we found information, and I'm going to put this up in the nest as well. We don't know much about this, and I can't find more information, but the brothers in 2022 were put under investigation for pimping, actual prostitution, blackmail, and forming an organized criminal group. And this is allegedly connected to a casino. Now, the brothers were in business with the Romanian mafia, specifically the Dorofti brothers. I don't know if I pronounced that correct, but they were in cahoots with the Romanian mafia running these casinos. And in 2022, they were under investigation for pimping, blackmail, and forming an organized criminal group. I don't know if this is ongoing. I don't know if this has been closed down. I don't know yet. I can't get any information, any other information, but this is something to be aware of, that this could pop up, and Tate could use this as, oh, they're pulling up some more bullshit charges because the other two cases failed. That's kind of what they do. But know that this has been pending since 2022 if it has not been dismissed already. Moving on to the US lawsuit. The Tate brothers are suing their American victim and her parents in the United States. They initially tried to sue the Moldovan victim, but she was released from the case due to jurisdictional issues. They also tried to sue a US Marine who called the US embassy to inform them that there could be an American citizen being held against her will. They tried to sue the Marine, but turns out you can't sue a Marine for doing his job and reporting a possible crime. So the Marine was dismissed from the case, as well as the Moldovan victim. So what's left is the American victim and her two parents. They tried to press charges against these two victims in Romania, claiming that they made false statements, but a judge dismissed that in Romania and threw it out. Dismissed it, threw it out. So what they did is they sued her, tried to sue both of them in the United States, a jurisdiction that has nothing to do with the case, to abuse the US legal system. It's a civil case in the US. They're suing her for defamation, conspiracy to for defamation, and a couple of other nonsense claims. Now, up to this point, the case moved to discovery. Discovery process is where both sides can finally share evidence. Up to this point, it was essentially the Tate brothers providing snippets of evidence, and evidence taken out of context out of Romania, taking chat messages out of context, showing them to a US judge, even though the messages are moved out of context and pasted together in a way that makes it look like it's a conversation that means something else. They provided enough information to where the judge said, okay, we can move to discovery, and now we can look at everything. So the judge has access to the Romanian indictment. Finally, he's going to be able to read through that, etc. This is probably not going to go the distance, but the update is the case was recently paused after a motion to stay was granted. which pauses the case for now. So that case is currently paused. That's where that is. And that is the same case where they have implicated me, my account here, and some other accounts here for trying to conspire to defame them, claiming that we are spreading lies about them by sharing the Romanian documents and Romanian snippets about their case. So that should be really fun in the future. Now, can Andrew Tate run for PM in the UK? No, no, he cannot, because if he steps foot in the UK, if somehow he weasels out of Romania, if he were to step foot in the UK, he would be arrested and prosecuted for human trafficking and rape. That's assuming he could even get out of Romania in the first place. And as of today, looking at the registry where you can see what political parties have filed applications to become political parties in the UK, he has not filed any application as of today to be in a political party. He has, however, launched a new meme coin, which is the Bruv meme coin. And as you can imagine, really quickly, they rugged everyone. It shot up and then they rugged everyone, pulled it down. A lot of people lost money on that. So surprise, surprise. So that's where we're at. That's all the updates. Now let's open up the space. I don't know. That was a lot of information, but that's where we are. If you want to,
For 2025, I have some big plans for the channel. I plan to do some more investigative pieces on a bigger scale and upgrade the production value on my videos. I'm going to need some support to make this happen. If you're unable to help financially, as always, watching, subscribing, liking, and sharing my videos is more than enough and appreciated. You can also help by joining as a member starting at $3.99 a month, or buying Gadget a coffee with a one-off or ongoing donation at buymeacoffee.com/gadget440.
we are. If you want to come up and speak, raise your hand. Pro Tate, anti Tate, I don't care. I only ask, keep the space on topic. Be respectful, keep the space on topic. And let's try not to go too far into speculation on different things. Let's try to keep it to the facts. It's Skindy, correct?
Yes, it's Skindy. Yes, correct.
Skindy. So we were in a space together yesterday, and I invited her to come into this space today and talk because she brought a very interesting perspective to the conversation that we were having. And I want to talk a little bit about human trafficking in general. And if you're just joining us, if you go up to the nest up at the top and you scroll over, you're going to see a chart that I have up there, which explains the human trafficking process. And I don't want to go too deep in the laws here, but the chart that you see represents what's called the Palermo Protocol. And this is the UN agreement that I believe 181 countries around the world have agreed upon at a minimum when defining human trafficking. So the country that you live in have agreed upon what human trafficking is, what exploitation is at a minimum. So countries will look at the Palermo Protocol and use that as a foundation and build on top of it if they don't already have their own rules where they might place this on top. So at a minimum, they're going to include this into the trafficking laws. And Romania has done that as well. And essentially what it means is it means that three elements are required for a human trafficking case, to be prosecuted for human trafficking, to be convicted of human trafficking. You need a single action, a single means, and a single purpose. As I said before, the action could be recruitment, transportation, harboring, receiving, sheltering, etc. The means could be deception, fraud, coercion, threats, violence, abuse of power, taking advantage of someone's vulnerability. And the purpose is always going to be some sort of exploitation, prostitution, slavery, forced labor, organ removal, or commercial sex work. So why are the brothers charged with human trafficking? Well, for everyone that was over the age of 18, they were charged with human trafficking based on what's called the lover boy method for most of them. And what that means is the brothers deceived the women, allegedly, made those women believe that they were going to be in a romantic relationship with them, or in some cases, believe that they were going to marry them and have children with them. But their actual intent was not to have a relationship with them. It was not to marry them or to have children with them. It was to manipulate them to get them to work in the sex industry. So when you're talking about the Tate brothers charged with human trafficking, they specifically recruited women through social media apps. They sold a course teaching people how to do this. talked about how to reach out to them on Instagram, what to say, how to get their attention, etc. Then through a period of time, just like anyone would do through an online relationship, they would get to know the victim. And they were very specifically, and this is according to the prosecutor, they were very specifically looking for vulnerable women from broken families. So they would get to know these victims through chat, and eventually they would agree to meet them. So they would meet them somewhere, and Andrew would perform, or they would perform what's called the PhD test. And this was where they would find out if their quality, if they're going to be obedient or not. So they would build up the false relationship through chatting. Then they would meet them somewhere. They would have sex with them. They would make sure they're going to be obedient, etc. And then they would talk them into either coming to Romania or coming to their city in Romania, according to the allegations. Now, for actions, one of the elements required, that would be recruitment and that would be transportation. They would transport them there as well. They also have sheltering because the women that they would bring, most of the women that they would bring over, they would put them in a different location, a sex worker house. Let's just call it that. So they would group women together who were working online, OnlyFans and webcam. They would group them together like a sex worker house. So they would recruit them, they would transport them, and they would shelter them. So they actually have three actions, three acts. You only need one. They had three. And in those sex worker houses, they would have an enforcer. This would be their accomplices, Luana and Georgiana. They had other ones in the past, and there's one that's implicated in the second case, but I'm going to refrain from mentioning her right now until the indictment actually comes. But the enforcers would make sure that the girls were working, make sure that the girls stayed in shape, made sure that they worked the hours that they were going to work, make sure they made the content that they were supposed to make sure they stayed in line, make sure they didn't leave, make sure that they didn't do anything they weren't supposed to do. And these enforcers, Luana and Georgiana, they were the ones that got their hands dirty so the Tates did not have to get their hands dirty. Tristan Tate, in the first case, picked up an additional charge of inciting violence. Georgiana, his accomplice, picked up an additional charge of violence. The reason why those charges exist is because one of the victims wanted to quit. And when she wanted to quit, Tristan ordered Georgiana to hit her and throw her out of the house. Georgiana did that, exactly. She threw her around the room, she beat her up, and this particular victim had had recent breast surgery, breast enhancement surgery. She still had stitches for the breast surgery. And Georgiana was allegedly trying to rip her stitches open to rip out the breast implants because they paid for them. They didn't want her to quit because she owed them money, which is debt slavery, which is also illegal and very common with human trafficking. They get the girls to do enhancements of their bodies. They say they pay for it, then they don't let them quit until they work it off. But usually they never get to work that off. That usually happens a lot with trafficking. So she beat her up under Tristan's order, tried to rip out her breast implants, ripped open the stitches. She went to the police asking for help, and the police uh, essentially talked her into not pressing charges because they knew Luana, the other accomplice. Luana used to be a police officer in Romania, and they said that she wouldn't do that. So she went to help. She went to get help, and instead of helping, they basically called them and said, "Come get your girl." So these police were later lightly, very lightly punished. We found out later. Nothing serious. Essentially, it was a slap on the wrist for not reporting this properly. But while this particular victim was there, while she was out, she was thrown out of the house. Georgiana and Luana, they threw out all of her belongings, got rid of her belongings except for her laptop. They threw away her clothes, all of that stuff. And by the way, they threw her out of the house half naked. So when she went to the police, she was half naked. What remained was her laptop, and they illegally accessed her laptop, got to her personal Facebook and her personal WhatsApp account, and took pornography that she was making for for OnlyFans, and they sent it to her friends and family and guys that she was talking to. And they did so in front of the other victims in the room. And Georgiana told them, and it's in chat messages, and there's witnesses to this, that the next one is going to get it worse, which is essentially the next one who wants to quit is going to get it worse. So Georgiana picked up 2 additional charges because of that. Those have to do with accessing a computer illegally, etc. So in terms of, well, why don't these girls just walk away? How can somebody be fooled? How can they be tricked? How can they do women not have agency? That sort of thing. There's a lot of fear. There's a ton of manipulation involved. And Skindy, I would like you to speak now and kind of go over what you went over yesterday about how they're targeting these vulnerable women and how they can find themselves in these situations. If you can take it from here, that'd be great.
Yeah, sure. So in the space yesterday, there were quite a few people who were asking questions like, why can't they just leave? How can they believe that, how can they fall for the trick of the lover boy method? And I think what people don't understand is when you're trafficking someone or someone's being trafficked, the trafficker invests so much time into grooming these people. And I mean months and months. Sometimes it can take up to a year to groom someone to make them fully believe in this world that you are building out for them. And suddenly, once the expectation, once the reward is supposed to arrive, the expectation isn't met. But by then it's too late. By then they may have handed over so much of their information, such as family contact details, next of kin details, passwords to their phones, passwords to their bank accounts and such. They may have even handed over their cards, their passports, their documentation like ID documentations in the event that they need to escape. So much trust has been built, and then there's a massive betrayal at the start of the trafficking or the slavery. Um, just to bounce off something that Crayon said is that they vet individuals, and this isn't just for, women who are trafficked. Any individual that's being trafficked, the trafficker is vetting for vulnerability. The trafficker wants somebody that isn't going to be looked for if they disappeared for a while. The trafficker is looking for someone who isn't going to have a dad storming around the country, calling the police, getting a private investigator, getting lawyers. Uh, the trafficker wants someone who probably isn't close to their family, isn't close to their parents, had a troubled childhood, had experienced trauma at a very early age, so that if trauma is experienced in adulthood, especially if that person hasn't received any sort of counseling or therapy, they are more likely to accept the trauma because they feel powerless. They have felt powerless since they were very, very young, and the use of blackmailing, the use of threats, and the young men in the space yesterday were saying things like, you'd need to chain me up for me to not leave. Well, there are physical chains and there are mental chains, and men and women are different. Women are more likely to be influenced and manipulated by men who appear to be strong and powerful. You could be a young girl who's probably like 14 or 15, just using Instagram. You have a desire to be validated. You want to be beautiful. Suddenly, this guy, who is very obviously wealthy based on the photos of his luxury items and who seems to be very popular and influential, takes an interest to you. This is something that is extremely validating for these young girls, and they are what we call love bombed, and this might sound quite cliche, but it is technically that. This is part of the grooming process, is to give these individuals what they never had and what they've been yearning for. And this could be so many different things, right? Maybe one girl was very poor when she was growing up. She couldn't afford even basic necessities. You shower them with material. Maybe somebody who'd never felt loved. You shower them with love. Maybe somebody felt like they never had purpose. You give that person purpose. This is usually what they call, sorry for using this language, but I don't know if it's the bottom bitch or the person who sort of manages the trafficked individuals. The person who,
Bottom bitch.
yes, the
It's the
person,
bottom bitch.
yeah.
Yeah.
So the person who dishes out the punishments on behalf of the trafficker, this person is usually the same gender, the same class, the same identity, the same appearance, the same shape, the same size, and may even have a history themselves of being in that position of being trafficked, but they've just been so obedient that they've been promoted to a supervisory or a managerial role where they are the eyes and ears of the trafficker when the trafficker is not there. Right. So with these girls, they're being controlled at every level. Their social media is probably monitored. They are monitored in terms of their movement, and also one of the most currently one of the most profitable scams are sex scams and pornography scams, and unfortunately, it happens to a lot of boomers. they may receive some sort of email that says, "Hey, we've been recording you on your device through an app called Pegasus, and we've seen the pornographic material that you're watching, and we even recorded you, stimulating yourself, and we've got this footage, and we've got all your contacts, and we will send it to everyone if you don't put 2,000 Bitcoin in this wallet by Tuesday," for example. The humiliation of engaging with sex or creating or using pornography is so painful. It's an incredibly profitable tool to manipulate and exploit people. So when these girls are being trafficked and made to create pornography, even if it goes to the point that it's against their will, I don't think people understand just how horrifying it is when they are threatened that their family, people who people who they've lost contact with, people who they probably had difficult relationships with, a father that they could never impress, a mother that could never love them properly, a brother who was always fighting with them, a best friend who just didn't think enough of them. The threat that your engagement in creating porn would be sent to all of these people, I don't think people can quite fathom just how intense that is, and these are one of the tactics that are used to mentally imprison people. So I'll leave it there. I know Pax has got his hands up, so I'll hand over to Pax if that's okay with you, Crowns.
Yeah, that was fantastic. Thank you for bringing that perspective. I also want to note when we're talking about why don't they leave, because that kept coming up. Why don't they leave? Why don't they leave? Why don't they leave? The trafficking, legally speaking, has already occurred. The fact that they leave or they don't leave has nothing to do with it. It's not relevant to the actual charge itself. Once they've been recruited or transported or sheltered, and they've been deceived or coerced into actually, uh, they don't even have to do the sex work. The exploitation technically doesn't have to happen to be prosecuted for human trafficking. The intent to traffic has to be there. So the fact that they stick around and they don't run away, as people say, it doesn't matter. The trafficking has already occurred, or the intent to traffic them has already occurred. Pax, you put your hands up. Go ahead.
Yeah, I would like to give some example from Romania, because I don't know if people are aware that the fact that Romania has a very big issues with human trafficking, especially prostitution rings. We have Romanian prostitution rings all over the Europe, and I would like to explain a little bit how it's happening in the prostitution. So they're targeting very young girls, very poor. They are going and befriending these girls, and after that they are promising them a marriage. And one moment in time, the perpetrator, it will come to the girl, and he will say, I'm having a problem with money. I owe money to somebody. My life is in danger. If I don't pay money right now, they will kill me. So actually, there is not even, something forceful to put them in prostitution. And actually, the victim herself will agree to do the prostitution. The blackmail, it will come later, after the victim is realizing what she is doing, and when she will want to get away from all this. But have in mind, initially the girls are agreeing by themselves to do the prostitution, because they are thinking they are helping their perpetrator, who helps them and who loves them.
Thank you for that, Pax. I put something up in the nest, which is something Pax and Skinny was talking about earlier. This is one of the snippets from the new document that came out for the second case, and I highlighted what they're saying here. Where there's this one specifically, I believe, for Tristan, and each situation for each victim is fairly similar. It says they were taking advantage of both the victim's obvious vulnerable state, which is a young age, lack of life experience, lack of material resources, lack of family support, and pre-existing psychological trauma, as well as by deceiving and regarding the intention to establish a relationship of love and marriage and the existence of feelings of love. So this is the sort of thing that they would do. They would try to specifically look for vulnerable women who didn't have good family support. They didn't have good friend support. They're poor. And some of these were mentioned very specifically. They had women that had pre-existing psychological trauma. So that's what you're dealing with. You're not dealing with just normal people. You're dealing with women who are coming with, I dare to say, baggage, but they're very vulnerable. They're very vulnerable. They're looking for an escape. They're easily manipulated. And as Skendi was saying, a lot of them were probably abused when they were younger, and they easily get sucked to these type of guys. You've all seen it. It was like, yeah, this girl always goes for this type of guy, or this guy always goes for this type of girl, right? Those sort of things happen as patterns. Iris, did you have something to add? And we have Anthony and a Viking. If you guys want to have something to speak, go ahead and raise your hand. Iris, the floor is yours. Otherwise,
Thank you very much for having me on here, and thanks to everyone who joined us today. I just wanted to speak briefly about the element of fraud in the human trafficking process. And I've been following this case since April 2024. One common misconception I keep on hearing and I keep on seeing people repeating is like, how can fraud or being lied to mean that you've been human trafficked? Well, that's the position of the law. And fraud involves manipulation and deception. So if you've recruited someone or you've asked someone to come and work for you under false pretenses by lying to them and manipulating them to get them to do commercial sex work for you, you've ticked the boxes of human trafficking. And there's people that say that, well, it's not the person who lie's fault. If you've been lied to, you had the obligation to use your common sense to know that you are being lied to. Well, there's this particular case. It's called Redgrave versus Head. The judge commented that you, the liar, the person who lied, telling others that if they had used their common sense, they would not have been lied to. It is not a defense for you. So long as you had that intent to lie to someone or misrepresent the person, and you actually did, and you caused the other person to rely on your lies, then you've committed an offense by law. And equally, the element of coercion under human trafficking. Coercion is dependent on the facts and the circumstances of each case, and it gives prosecutors the ability to use that to identify certain cases that, under normal circumstances, such as fraud, force, it wouldn't give them the opportunity to prosecute such a person. So, coercion can sometimes occur when there's limitations on the movement of a person, threats, or some form of limitation in general, or emotional blackmail that would prevent a person from acting on their own free will. So in Tate's case, for example, what they are accusing him is invoking of false debts, taking away their passports, threatening them with violence to break down their resistance. That's some form of, that is coercion for you in this case. Because if you invoke false debts or you tell someone they are owing you, it wouldn't give them the ability to leave when they want, as they have to pay you back before they have their freedom of movement. Yep. So that's just the little I have or I could add. And equally on the aspect of vulnerability, there's certain things that can happen to a person in their childhood that could predispose them to manipulation from certain highly sociopathic or psychopathic individuals like the Tates. So in this case, for example, victim one, we've learned that she's a victim of sexual abuse since her childhood, I believe from a gentleman called Keith Fox, who was a yoga trainer, sexually abused her, and then another 30-something-year-old man, Dustin Milner, also sexually abused her and tried to take advantage of her. People who have gone through such events are looking for love, and they are looking for someone they think will protect them. And so when she met Tristan, in her mind, that is what she believed or who she believed would be that person for her. And well, I think Tristan very well saw that vulnerability and used that to take advantage of her. And also in victim two's case, she says that she is from a broken home. Her parents are divorced, and she was living with her grandma as at the time she met the Tates. Such a person also is vulnerable because they don't have family support. She's poor and she's looking out for someone who she thinks is going to be her savior, someone who's going to be her protector, someone who's going to be her helper. And that's the kind of person Andrew presented himself to be to her. So when she fell into that kind of situation, she didn't really have any defense mechanisms or support systems to rely on. And there was really nothing much that could be done for her at that point. So that's just what I wanted to add. Thank you very
Thank you.
much for having me on here.
Thank you, Iris. I appreciate that. And you brought up something that made me think about something else about we're talking about the intent to traffic. You can be prosecuted for that as well. One of the things that they pushed really heavy on the American victim. And by the way, another lie that the brothers told was that a U.S. judge determined that the girls had lied. That was not true. That was not true at all. We covered that. We actually put up what the judge said. They were quoting the Tate, and they love to do this. They were quoting things that they said in the court. All the judge did was acknowledge that Tate's had submitted this information. The judge did not make a ruling. That case is paused, but it was also in the discovery process before it was paused. So the judge has not made any decisions on that. And I don't think he's going to be able to make a decision about a Romanian case. He's an American judge. He's not going to make any decision on a Romanian case. But the point I was getting at is early on when they smeared the American victim, they kept pushing this idea that she was only there. She was only there for a week. She was only there for a week. She couldn't have been trafficked. She couldn't have been trafficked. She was only there for a week. They pushed that really hard. Their entire PR network pushed that hard as if nothing could have happened to her within that week. But you have to remember the laws are their intent was to traffic her. The amount of time that she spent there has nothing to do with the charges. Tristan was the one charged for her, and his intent, according to the charges, was to traffic her. He recruited her, he transported her, he sheltered her, he deceived her, and it was doing it for the purpose of sexual exploitation. They just didn't get around to doing it yet. So his intent was to traffic her. The amount of time that she spent in Romania doesn't have anything to do with the charge. Pax, go ahead.
Yes, I would like to add that the same judges who sent the indictment back to the prosecutor have ruled during those court hearings that the act of human trafficking is starting from the moment of recruitment by the law. So this is a quotation from those judges who sent back the indictment for to be rewrite. So when we are saying that by the law the human trafficking is starting from the moment of recruitment, we are not saying just from our interpretation. Also, we are quoting the judges.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, I also wanted to speak briefly about the civil defamation lawsuit. Per my readings and understanding, for defamation, we need three elements: that the statement was defamatory, the statement was made about the plaintiff, and third, it was published to a third party or the general public. So with Tristan and Andrew's case, the statement being defamatory means that it has damaged their reputation to right-thinking members of society or just people in general. And it's very obvious that the statement too was made about them, and that it was the third aspect. That is where I think the flaw in their cases with publication. Because when we are talking about publication, it needs to be something that's published to the general public by the individual. It had to be published with reckless disregard for the truth or even with malicious intent. Now, with this publication aspect, I do not think it has been met because the defendant, victim one, has never come out publicly, done any form of interview, any form of video on social media, or even written any book or memoir to talk about her experience with the Tate brothers. All she did was to give statements to the Romanian authorities, who then acted on that to then prosecute the Tates moving forward. And I also learned that these statements she made to the authorities, it couldn't possibly be considered as a publication to a third party for that element of publication to be fulfilled. Then there's also the defenses. Under defamation, there's three main defenses: there's truth, there's privilege, and there's fair comment. So truth is the obvious one. Well, the defendant was saying was the truth. Fair comment is when you say something based on your observation of an issue. You give a comment or an opinion of an issue, but you must certify or emphasize that it's your personal opinion. Then there's the defense of privilege. Privilege is divided into absolute and qualified privilege. With absolute privilege, when you make those types of statements, they cannot be used against you, or you can't be prosecuted for making such statements. Then, with the element of qualified privilege, the only reason or way by which you can be prosecuted for those statements is if you made them with malicious intent. Now, per my readings, I learned that under Florida law, when you make statements to authorities or to police, which they then use in their investigations or prosecution of an individual, it could be considered as privileged, because the rationale is that the police or the authorities rely on the witness statements of people in the community to prosecute crime or to investigate people for certain crimes. So if people come and make statements, they must not be afraid of making such statements. They shouldn't have the fear that someone will come and sue them later for making statements to the police. They shouldn't have the fear of any form of reprisal or attack defamation lawsuits. So they should have the freedom, in essence, to come and make a statement to the police so that the police can use that to prosecute or investigate an individual. So that's the where the qualified privilege comes in. The victim one statement comes in. So the statement she made to the police was then used for criminal investigations. The question that we would have to be asking ourselves is that, would her statements within the context that she made them be considered as qualified privilege? Those are the two areas that I think the Tate brothers case could be dismissed upon, because for the reasons given above, I think it's going to be dismissed if the judge is to ever consider these
Yeah.
options or these issues that I have brought up. And for anyone interested, elements of privilege, you can read up on the case of Fridovich versus Fridovich. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I just want to add something to that. So they're essentially suing her in the United States, and the way they claimed jurisdiction on this, Romania already threw this out. They tried this in Romania. The Romanian judge looked at it and tossed it out. The way they got jurisdiction in the United States was because the American victim, while in Romania, was sending text messages to her parents who were in the United States saying, these guys are trafficking women. We're going to get the hell out of here. She was telling her parents, "Look, we're leaving. We're going to London. We're getting out of here. These guys are trafficking women. They're hurting women. We're going to go." Because those messages were sent from Romania to the United States, the judge allowed jurisdiction on that. To this point, it can still be thrown out. It's still in the preliminary stages. It's just now, well, it's paused now, but it just went to discovery. They're claiming that because she sent those messages to the parents, it was defamatory. And they're also stating that because she gave statements to the Romanian police, which is what you were talking about, Iris, that those statements that she gave pretty much ruined their business, ruined their reputation, etc. And all she did, to be clear, I'll be very clear about this with human trafficking cases, specifically this case, because this comes up a lot. A lot of people will say, well, maybe these women are lying. Maybe these girls are just out for money. Maybe XYZ, right? But in a human trafficking case, specifically, let's just focus on this one. This isn't a situation where the victims contacted the authorities and said, help us. There was a call by a US Marine to the US Embassy who said there could be an American being held against her will. That was the initial raid that happened. The initial raid that happened in April 2022. DCOT raided them, raided their house. They realized that an American was not being held against their will, and immediately realized that they stumbled into what looks like a human trafficking operation. So from that moment, they started investigating them for human trafficking. Now, the only, besides the US Embassy call, besides that, everything else, all the other victims, 100% of the victims were identified by the authorities after investigating the Tate brothers. So you've got, I believe, what is it, 40? What do you, I think I've got it here somewhere. There are 49 victims between the two Romanian cases. I believe, sorry, 42 in Romania for the two Romanian cases. And with all of them were identified by the authorities after an investigation. Those women didn't first go to the police and say, help us. They were identified after investigating the brothers, after searching their computers, after searching their phones, after reading their text messages, after looking at CCTV footage, after tracking down financial transactions. They identified the victims because I keep seeing it coming up. Oh, these girls are whores. They're looking for money, blah, blah, blah. No, the authorities identified them as trafficking victims. That's why they're victims in the case. That's why the couple of girls who came forward and said, well, I'm not a victim in the case. That's why they can't just excuse themselves from the case. It's because the authorities found credible evidence that they are trafficking victims. And the one in particular, Yasmina, she's got the huge Tate-owned tattoo down her arm. There's a witness statement in their in one of the documents where they state very specifically she was giving 100% of her OnlyFans money to Andrew, and she was being blackmailed. She was being blackmailed with the threat that they would tell her parents what she was doing if she didn't continue to work. This is the woman who came forward and said that she's not a victim. She was also, along with the other victim, she was caught giving false statements to the authorities. She was transported to Dubai by Tate's people, where, according to the prosecutor, she remains to this day under his control. Keep in mind, the brothers were also caught influencing statements, where it's 5 or 6 different victims where they caught them trying to bribe them, influence them, scare them, pressure them, etc., to either lie to the police, not cooperate with the police, or withdraw their statements. So these guys have already been caught trying to get these victims to defend them. So when you have a situation like the American victim, who they essentially made an example out of her, they don't care. They're suing her for $5 million. They're not going to get $5 million out of her, and they know that. They're suing her. They smeared her. They're ruining her life and drove her into hiding, not because they want money, not because they think they're going to get justice, because this is a message to all the other victims who are considering coming forward against them. This is the message that we will ruin your life like we're ruining her life if you try to stand against us. Now, out of the first case, it's very important because the brothers have said, no one has said anything bad against us. There are no victims. There are 7 victims identified in the first case alone. Out of those 7 victims, 5 of those victims gave statements already against the brothers. 5 out of the 7 gave statements against the brothers. Out of that 5, 4 of them are moving forward as injured party victims, or civil parties who are seeking compensation for the brothers, not because they originally set out to get compensation, but because after they were identified as victims, the authorities notified them of their rights as a victim, that they can seek compensation. Now, out of the second case, I don't have it in front of me how many victims have given statements against them that we've identified. But I know for a fact the minor, who was 15, she's testifying against Andrew specifically. In total, so far that I've seen, there could be more, there are 11 victims who have given statements against the brothers, or preparing to testify against the brothers. So this notion that they've put out there that there's no victims, nobody's said anything bad against them, is hilariously and embarrassingly false. 11 of them have already given statements against them. Some of them are going to trial against them. They've been caught, again, paying, bribing, influencing 5 or 6 of them to lie for them. So these guys are in a lot of trouble. Skinny, you put your hand up. Go ahead.
Thank you, Karan. The young lady, I think her name is Vivian. The videos that she's made publicly saying that, the beatings from Andrew towards me were consensual, or the work that I did for him was consensual, and I wasn't trafficked, and I wasn't abused, and I wasn't kidnapped. These admissions that people who support Tate, the admissions that she's made, that people use to defend him, to say, look, this is the woman that probably made him the most money. Um, I want to bring your attention to an individual called Larry Ray, and I'm going to use this as an example to understand what psychological manipulation looks like and what it does to an individual, even after the trafficking, the abuse completely stops. So Larry Ray is somebody who is currently serving 60 years in prison for human trafficking, racketeering, physical, psychological, and sexual abuse of I think 6 university students, okay, including some males. And he was able to manipulate these students, all 6 of them, to the extent that there is footage of them behaving like children, crying like children, and having tantrums as if they were 3 years old, whereas before they even met him, they were fully functioning normal adults that were studying in university. Um, the person he was the closest with, who would be akin to his bottom bitch, was somebody that was also prosecuted alongside him for torturing one of the young girls that he eventually ended up pimping out, who made him approximately $2 million in about 4 years. This individual, who was also prosecuted alongside him for a shorter sentence, was so badly manipulated because he started with her to the point that it took her 3 years to regain herself, to regain the memories that she had of her identity, her family, what she liked, down to the food that she liked, the clothes that she liked to wear, and removing herself from the pet names
Mm.
that he used to call her and returning to what her actual name is. Um, please think about this, and you can look this up. There's actual footage of this. People made a documentary about this guy and everything that he's done. His name is Larry Ray. He's currently serving 60 years in prison for this. And then go back to Vivian. Look at this girl who I believe Andrew Tate met when she was probably definitely under the age of 18. I don't want to say particular. 14?
She was 14 or 15.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
14 or 15. Yeah.
And to start getting manipulated to that point, she has an accent. She has an accent. English is not her first language, okay? There may have even been some sort of interpretation issues or misunderstandings about what he's telling her, how he's communicating with her. How difficult must it have been for this young girl to know that she was being manipulated? And it seems even up until this point, she has no idea that that even happened. Larry Ray did come to mind, and the students that he abused and psychologically tortured and trafficked. These people came to mind because when they tried to do a psychological evaluation on Larry Ray, psychologists all across America at various levels with various experiences could not evaluate him and could not diagnose him with anything because his manipulation was so thick, so intense, and so incredible that he could manipulate psychologists to not be able to diagnose him with anything. So please take this into consideration, especially when people use examples like Vivian. This can sometimes be deliberately done, right? Like you start with the most vulnerable and youngest one, and you build that person up because she is going to be the person that vouches for you. Think about things like Stockholm syndrome, and people associate that there's a misconception about Stockholm syndrome, and the misconception is that the people who are kidnapped fall in love with the kidnapper. That's not what's happening. It's that the people that are kidnapped have had so much fear instilled in them that they are terrified for their lives, even when the kidnapper has been put into prison, right? Because they were made to believe that no matter what happens, he will always be watching. Someone will always be watching. The consequences will be coming. Someone will find you. Someone will hurt you. Someone will hurt your family. So they have to sort of disassociate from self-preservation and act to preserve the person that has kidnapped them, because that is a cope. It is a coping mechanism to keep themselves safe. And it seems for them it's much better to do that than to actually vouch for themselves. So thanks.
I
Wow.
would like
Yeah,
to add a
spot
very
on
quick.
there.
Sorry, I would like to add very quick because you brought up Vivian. Vivian, it was recruited when she was very young and after her mother died. So the judges are quoting this in their rulings because she was into a psychological state caused by her mother dying.
Wow.
Yeah, again, preying on, vulnerable individuals. You talked about the money, Skindy. So DCOT has, they listed there for her, what's the amount here? I've got it posted on my timeline here. So she apparently made 1 million, let me round it, $1,500,000 essentially for Andrew. That's what they were able to track down for Vivian for the money that she made for him. 1,500,000 between working on My Free Cams and OnlyFans. And they're saying that she started working at 17 years old for him. So yeah, she made him a significant amount of money, and she also made a bunch of videos for him. And those of you probably remember when the Tates first got arrested, there was a flood of videos that were coming out, and people were saying, "Oh, these guys are innocent; they would never do anything." So we've talked about this in length before, and I've got the conversations posted on my timeline. But Andrew was recorded; he was caught on recorded jail calls. I don't know if he was just that desperate, or his narcissism got the best of him, or he just didn't know that his calls were being recorded. I don't know the case, but he was recorded through his jail calls. He would call his assistant and then have his assistant put him through to his cousin Luke. He was forbidden to speak to Luke because Luke is implicated in the case. Luke lived with him, their cousin Luke. So he would call his assistant, get Luke on the phone. Luke would get on the phone. He told Luke to find people to make those videos, to say things, to say that DCOT was manipulating them to make statements, DCOT was pressuring them to lie. And he told them, get Vivian, have Vivian make a video, tell her what to say. And then they came back and said, Vivian made a video, it was good. Tell her, have her make another video, tell her what to say. So he was telling some of these girls what to say in these videos to make, and Vivian was one of them. She's been with him since she was 14 or 15 years old. I mean, you can imagine the trauma bonding for, a child. Essentially, you're 14, 15 years old, you're a child getting hooked up with somebody like Andrew Tate, the trauma bonding. I mean, that woman will ride or die for that man, unfortunately. And that's the way it's going to go down for her. And he's picked up a charge, trafficking in minors, because of her. Okay, I'm going to go around and get to some more people. If you want to speak, go ahead and raise your hand. Just a girl in the world, you had your hand up.
Would I be watching what they're posting and things now? Like they are spreading a lot of misinformation and saying all sorts of weird and wild sort of stuff. Will this be watched and monitored at all by DICOT? Like it doesn't. Like I'm Australian,
Yes.
so I understand the laws here, but over there I don't understand how they can get away with doing this. And DICOT don't correct anything. Like they don't make any media statements. Like I don't understand any of that.
Yes, they are watching them. There's a specific mention in one of the documents where I believe Tate was putting out a message. He made a post, and they mentioned that in the post that it was a threatening message to one of the victims. So they're watching his account. And what Pax and some other Romanian journalists and Romanian lawyers have mentioned, it's rare that Romania will issue a gag order where they silence someone from speaking. But I haven't seen any additional information on this, but I believe Romania is also investigating them for Pax. Correct me on the name on this, but it's for hate speech or a hate crime. It's I believe it's hate speech or something along those lines. Go ahead, Pax. I don't remember the exact name of it.
Yes, it's not. We don't have the concept of hate speech exactly, or hate speech laws. We are having something related to incite against protected groups like women or minorities and things like this. So those when you are inciting against these kind of groups, you are getting punished. We don't have specifically mentioned in our laws hate speech.
You call it incitement. It's not called hate
Just,
specifically. It's
just
called incitement.
we are having just incitement against some protected
Groups.
groups.
Yeah, incitement against the protected groups. They're under investigation for that. I think the smartest thing. Look. Nobody wants to see their posts. Like, unless you're a fan, you don't want to see their posts. I think a lot of the stuff that they put out there is just highly offensive. They're trying to get clicks, homophobic, racist, all of it. I find it incredibly disgusting posts.
Yeah,
That
agree.
that being said, I think it's the smartest thing DCOT could have ever done. Yeah, let them run wild. Let them go on social media. I mean, think about this from an investigation standpoint. Let these guys go on
Hang
social
themselves.
media and just run their mouths. Let them do it. Let them do it. And you'll notice something really interesting that happens. It happens a lot with Tristan. Tristan will make these wild accusations. Like he made a claim that the prosecutor had his electric cut off. Within like 2 hours, we found that he had it scheduled, like that area was scheduled to have their electric turned off. So he went back and deleted his post. So he'll make these wild claims against the prosecutor and say that they're doing this or they're doing that and they're violating my rights or whatever. And then he'll come back and he'll delete them. But he's smart how he does it. He makes a post, he lets his PR team, Suleiman Ahmed, Dr. Lupus, Jackson Hinkle, all these other, fuckwits, he'll let them repost it and copy and paste the message. Then he'll delete his post so he doesn't have any future problems with it. They're really smart how they do stuff.
I don't think so. I think they're dumb as fuck.
Well, I mean, they got caught. They got caught. Look, these guys are facing they're facing decades in prison. Decades in prison. So it's going to take a miracle for them not to spend a significant amount of time in prison. Hey, Anthony, what's happening?
Yeah, great space, by the way, guys. Thanks very much for shining the light on these men's darkness. I think being a father of 3 daughters myself, I think it's our duty to really shine the light on these men and make sure we can help somehow get these guys behind bars. Sick and tired of seeing all the posts that these guys are pouring out there, kind of manipulating vulnerable young girls. Okay, because as a trauma coach, I think someone said yesterday, how do you measure that someone's been traumatized? Well, when you have a client in front of you and they're crying and they feel unworthy and they feel ashamed and they feel like they don't want to live anymore and they don't feel lovable, it's very, very sad situation. Okay, thank God I'm able to help these people. But there are a lot of people who won't get help and do have to carry on living a life of being traumatized and coming up against idiots like these pair of, I don't know. I'm not even gonna use any defamatory words because what's the point? I do believe these guys will be locked up soon. There's enough video evidence and self-snitching from these pair for any prosecutor to use to kind of send these guys to prison, and sooner rather the better. Okay, because I don't want. I want to see a world for us all to live in where there's no trauma. Okay. But these guys, that's all they're doing is just traumatizing people after people after people after people all the time. And I think there's a lovely lady called Skindy. She's bang on the money. I don't know what you do for a living, Skindy, but you are, the empathy. In fact, the empathy that all you guys have on this space is remarkable. So I want to thank you all for being able to put yourselves in the victim's shoes. Okay, so thank God for that. That's what I can say. So keep up the great work, though, guys. Please. It's very, very, very important to keep shining light on these topics because without you guys, okay, I don't think there would be kind of help out there for these victims. So please keep doing what you're doing. You're doing the right thing. Light will always prevail over darkness. Okay, so I love you all and keep doing what you're doing, and I'm gonna just carry on listening here and learning myself. Okay,
Thank you, Anthony.
and
Always
I'm also
appreciate it.
here as a trauma coach, by the way. I'm also here to be able to, help people. Okay, so please get hold of me if you want to talk or someone's been affected by these idiots. Okay, and you need some help. Please get hold of me. I'll be happy to have a chat with you and see if I can help you recover from your own traumas. So, yeah, please reach out if you need any help. Okay.
Thank you, Anthony. Always
And,
appreciate you
and
stopping by.
yeah, you too, Crayons. Thank you, brother. I love all you guys too. Okay, so you're
Cheers,
doing the
man.
right thing, man.
Cheers. Well, that's the thing. That the people are always like, well, why are you wasting your time? Because it's the right thing to do. Like if you have to
Absolutely.
sit here and ask why people are doing this, why people are sharing stuff, why they're trying to raise awareness, if you have to ask why anyone is raising awareness to criminal activity where people are actually getting hurt, if that's your thought process, that's a you problem. Because that's just the natural right thing to do. Now I understand that everybody wants to, be out there on the front lines and take a beating for it, but don't ask somebody why are you sharing this? Because that's the right thing to do, and I'm not afraid of these guys. It's that
Yeah.
simple. Adam, how you doing in
Ye-
Portugal, man?
Hey, Crayons, I'm doing good. It's good to finally meet up with you guys again. We've been on these guys for what, years now? Holy crap! I remember the pandemic and listening to your and Thoughts and Pax Wax and Gadget and Nick Monroe during the pandemic. Like, holy crap, this has been going on for so long. And I just wanted to. I was listening to Anthony speak just there, and I was listening to how he was talking about his own kids, and I was thinking, like, that's exactly, as far as I know, how we all got involved in the beginning. Was our kids basically started talking to us about Andrew Tate. In my case, it's a little bit different. I was looking for positive it sounds so crazy now. I was looking for positive male role models for my 11-year-old at the time, who's now 14, almost 15, and stumbled down a way wrong rabbit hole and wound up at Andrew Tate. And I know that Crayons has a kind of a similar story with his kids basically coming home and talking about Andrew Tate. So we got interested in it because of our children, and I think this topic. And one thing I wanted to say was that touched my heart about Anthony talking about his daughters, because geez, holy crap, would you want your daughters to avoid a guy like Andrew Tate? Holy crap. But outside of that, we talked over the last few years about the idea that the Tate brothers would cut and run many times. We have I've looked at their place on the on Google Maps and seen that they have an airport close to them, and I think we all decided that it's probably not in their best interest to cut and run, because then they'd be international criminals, not just wanted by DICOT but also by Interpol. So now it seems, just from my coming back to this information after a few weeks, or a few months rather, is it looks like instead of trying to cut and run, he's like quadrupling down and now wants to run for, what is he? He wants to be the prime minister of Britain now. Like, what is this? Like, is anyone following this? It's so crazy.
Yeah, he hasn't even registered yet as a political party, and because there's an extradition, essentially there's an arrest warrant for him in the UK. This is a grift. This is a grift, and he's also going to use this as a way to. I don't know if it's going to be when the next indictment comes, or when they join the cases, or maybe the third case comes. He's going to use this as an excuse for why he's hit with a new case or new charges. They're trying to silence me. They're trying to stop me from becoming. That's exactly what he's going to do. He already started a meme coin, and they rugged it and scammed a bunch of people on that using the bruv thing or whatever it is. This is a grift. That's all it is. He'll be arrested if he steps. If he, first of all, Romania is not going to let him out. But let's just say they did. He would be arrested when he goes to the UK and prosecuted for human trafficking and rape, because they have that arrest warrant there for another case that's just waiting for them. Yeah, so yeah, the stuff that people fall for coming from this guy is just absolutely mind-boggling. Mosin, man, I hope I didn't mispronounce your name. Mosin, I brought you up.
Hi, Crayons. Yes, you pronounced my name correctly.
Yeah, nailed it. Okay.
I just came up to say, your work is absolutely fantastic. You're a legend. I've been following your work ever since the beginning on this case, and yeah, I usually don't like to speak in spaces and stuff. Just came up to say, you're a fantastic human being. You don't have to justify to anybody why you're doing it. Everybody should be doing what you do. You're relentless. You're accurate, and you're powerful, and you're a brave human being. Thank you so much for doing this. And yeah, I totally agree with you. Everything they do is a grip. Everything is a sell, as you always say. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you for the kind words, but it's a team effort. There are a lot of people who are getting documents, translating documents, trying to figure out what's going on, staying on top of the judicial decisions. Yeah, it's a team effort. It just so happens that my account got a lot of attention, so I kind of I became the nail that sticks up, so to speak, when it comes to this sort of thing. The brothers are currently, a judge has not approved it yet, but they are trying to subpoena my user information and my private DMs here on X. They're trying to get a subpoena to get my user information and my private DMs so that they can sue me. So we're probably going to get to the point where they try, which is hilarious, because yeah, they're going to sue me for sharing their videos and their court documents. Like that's going to backfire so spectacularly. Like I almost want them to succeed, just so I can just absolutely thrash them in whatever jurisdiction they want to pull this into.
I have a quick
Yeah, go
question.
ahead. Yeah,
There is a lady on the timeline that I think they tried to sue, well, they are suing Samantha Smith, who was also one of the victims of the grooming gangs in the UK. And now a lot of people are quote tweeting Andrew and his brother saying, "Sue me, I'm going to call you a rapist as well." Um, do you know much about that? Are they actually suing her? And if they
they
are they
won't.
suing anyone else?
No, the only people they have actually sued successfully, they've sued their US trafficking victims and her parents. That's it. Now they're trying to get my information and the information of two other accounts on here that have been posting their court documents, etc. But a judge has not signed off on that subpoena. So unless a judge signs off on the subpoena and X agrees to that, they're not going to sue anyone. The Tate, for those of you who don't know, the Tate brothers have a history of threatening to sue people and they never follow through. So I welcome it. Sue me, fuck faces. I would love to see you guys in court. I will demolish you. I will ravish you fuckheads in court. Because what's going to happen is through the discovery process, I get to prove that everything I said was true. That means I get to subpoena all of their documents from all of their court cases into US court and make sure that they do not remain sealed so everyone can access those documents unredacted so they can see all of the crimes that they've committed that they're trying to hide from the world. So bring it on. Like I'm not afraid of these guys. I'm not, you know, I'm a grown ass man. I'm not afraid of these guys in any way. These guys are young enough to be my kids. Like I'm not afraid of these guys in any way, shape, or form. I laugh
This
at
is
them.
why we love you, crayons.
Yeah, but yeah. Anyway, it's a team effort. So thank you for the kind words and the tape. Listen, for those of you who don't know, they record these spaces, they screenshot my posts, and they put them together in their everything that they file in their US lawsuit, trying to get the judge to sign off on a subpoena to get my private DMs. Like they are so desperate to silence me, it's absolutely hilarious. Gut splitting hilarious. Bring it on. I'm not afraid of you guys. I will destroy both of you in court. Embarrass you at a level you've never been embarrassed before. Look, the Tate brothers are master manipulators. They're masters at manipulating the media. For those of you who don't know, these guys have gone as far as to send out press releases to the mainstream media that has disinformation in it, misinformation. So the media will run a story that's incorrect, and then that becomes the new narrative. That becomes the narrative. They've done this multiple times. They send false press releases, or I'm not going to say false. They send press releases out, but then they distort the truth and they frame it a different way so it's not true. And then the media runs with it. And then they reference that. And then that becomes the story. These guys are master manipulators at a level it needs to be studied. They truly, I mean, they're masters at their craft. And because of this, and because of their entire PR network, the Jackson Hinkles, the Mario Nafal holds the largest Twitter spaces here. I mean, he's got his ear, and he does Tate's bidding. He pushes nonstop misinformation about Andrew Tate, nonstop on the payroll. So they've
Can
got these
I
massive accounts that are just pushing this misinformation. And I think a lot of them are in Elon's ear, and Elon is just being Elon. He doesn't have time to look into it. I mean, he could if he wanted to, but he's not looking into it. He believes the hype. Go ahead. Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, no, I'm grateful if obviously that's the case and I've not seen it. I feel like we're under a kind of cult leaders with the Tates and that they're turning very much into with the amount of responses that they have from their what I call them sheeples. It's just like herd mentality. Oh, this man's screaming, it's the Matrix. And obviously it's very replicating of Elon when Elon does the blue pill, red pill tweets. You remember that? we're going against, you are the media now, and I've noticed that the Tates are very, very good at replicating the general consensus of what Elon followers are agreeing with Elon, with themselves, to kind of make sure, oh, it's the Matrix, it's the government, it's anti-establishment, it's the red pill, it's the, and they're trying to create this kind of cult followers that any convictions that will and likely be placed against them, because they probably will end up in prison at some point, that they're still going to have all of these sheeples after them, and it's going to be really difficult for us as a kind of awoken people to be able to say, well, actually, he's a rapist, he's a pedophile, he's a trafficker, what the fuck are you talking about? Wake up. Don't just follow these people because they're angry and they're aggressive and they're really masculine, even though they have no balls. But whatever, let's not go down that route. But the question I wanted to ask, because I don't want to take up too much time, sorry. We have to have a dig about the size of his genitalia. It is hilarious, and it has kept me very much amused over the last few weeks. But I do apologize. I don't want to lower myself to his standards. So my question is, now that obviously we have all the applications to delay, to argue, to everything that they're doing, in your mind, what would be the time frame of an actual court case beginning against them, as in a trial? And how long do you think a trial will likely last before we get our final judgment day against the brothers?
Well, that's a loaded question. So here, Pax, please jump in on this and help me on this if I get it wrong with the process here. So because there's two cases right now, the first case and the second case in Romania, they were disjoined. The second case was originally supposed to be part of the first case. They split them up. Now that the prosecutor is rewriting the first indictment, there's a high probability he's going to rejoin the cases and make one large case. Whatever happens, let's just say he does that. Let's say he rejoins the cases. Now, there's a couple of things here. Number one, because the brothers are under two different levels of a preventive measure. One, for the first case, they're both under judicial control, meaning they can't leave Romania. Can't leave Romania. They have to check in regularly with the police. They can't contact witnesses. They can't contact victims, etc. They have Andrew has an additional level of preventive measures of house arrest for the second case because he allegedly raped a 15-year-old girl. Now, if they put those cases together, there could be some issues because when you put someone under preventive measure and you charge them, you only have 180 days to indict them, or you have to release them off the preventive measure. So for the second case, that's going to come up in February. I don't know what the exact date is, but it's sometimes in February. Now, Pax might be able to add some light on this, but if they rejoin these two cases, I don't know how that's going to play out with that 180-day limitation on that. But let's just say, for the purpose of this conversation, let's say the indictment comes in February and they've rejoined the cases. Let's say they put it out in February. That the case then has to pass through again the preliminary chamber. The preliminary chamber is a single judge who will review all of the evidence to ensure that it was acquired legally and in accordance with Romanian law, and they will hear any arguments provided by the defense as to why certain pieces of evidence should be removed, or maybe their rights were violated, whatever claims they had. The last time they went through the preliminary chamber, and it passed through the preliminary chamber with flying colors, the original first case went through the preliminary chamber. 100% of the evidence was approved for trial, and 100% of Tate's claims were rejected as unfounded. It was devastating. The judge ordered the trial. Tate appealed that decision, went to the Court of Appeals. That's where we're at now. The appeals judge sent it back to the prosecutor to fix a couple of issues with the indictment. So the case has to go through the preliminary chamber again. We know from the first time that they use all sorts of delay tactics. For example, they sat on videos. They were given, I believe it was hard drives of videos of CCTV footage of the house and then of the neighborhood that was showing the house where the victims were actually kept. They sat on that footage for 5 or 6 months, maybe even been 7 months, and then only at the preliminary chamber, after they've been sitting on the videos for all that time, they said, we can't look at the videos. I don't know if they said it was an encryption problem or a password. I don't know what it is, but they delayed all that time got to the preliminary chamber and said, "Oh, we can't view these videos. You have to make them again for us." So then DCOT had to make those videos again, prolonging over and over and over. They wanted to see proof that everyone who used the software to extract the data off of their devices was properly trained to extract the data. They wanted to see the licensing for the software that was used. They kept doing all of these things that kept causing delays, and it drew out the preliminary chamber to a ridiculous amount of time. The case has to go through all of that again. So I can only imagine that they're going to use every stall tactic available to them to slow that process down once again. And if the preliminary chamber judge again orders the trial, they can appeal that decision again. And then appellate judges have to review the case. So, in an absolute best case scenario, and Pax, correct me if you think I'm wrong here. In a best case scenario, if the preliminary chamber cruises through, it goes through the appeal process and everything passes through, we might get a trial announcement at the end of this year or sometime in 2026. That's my guess on that. Pax might have a different opinion on that, but I think it's going to come down to how quickly or slowly things go through the preliminary chamber and how quickly or slowly things go through the Court of Appeals. But these guys are going to slow down the process as long as possible for two reasons. One, they don't want to go to trial. Despite the fact that they're telling everyone they want a fair trial, they do not want to go to trial, because if they go to trial, they're going to be convicted. There are too many victims, there's too many charges. The odds are not in their favor. And I don't know what the exact number is, but DCOT has something. It's in the high 90% conviction rate for human trafficking cases. Like when you're being prosecuted by DCOT, like, you're probably going to go to prison in most cases. So they don't want to go to trial, because when that trial starts, the clock is ticking where they're going to go to one of the worst prisons in the world. And even in the best case scenario, if a miracle happens and they're acquitted on all charges magically, they get arrested immediately upon acquittal, and they get extradited to the UK for another human trafficking and rape case. In those charges, they're facing life imprisonment there. These guys don't want to go to trial. They are going to do everything they can to prolong the Romanian trial. And in a best case scenario where they were, I don't know how they could just magically beat all the charges, but let's say they did, they definitely don't want to go to the UK, because the UK is not going to fuck around. The UK is not going to fall for their bullshit. They're going to prosecute them
That's right.
quickly. Yeah, the UK is going to swiftly go through this case, and they're going to bury them alive.
You
So
know,
they don't want to go to the UK.
the other thing that the UK will do as well, which I'm not obviously legally trained, by the way, just for reference, but they will probably be deemed a flight risk, and they'll probably be remanded, which means that they'll go to prison without conviction at that time, but they'll be held in our prison system, in a cell before it actually goes to court. So I think you're absolutely correct about that, is that they should be absolutely petrified of the UK, which is why it's so stupid why they keep saying that they're going to sue everybody. I was like, what are you going to do? Walk into London High Court? You can't even leave Romania. And if you do step foot in this country, you're going to get arrested immediately. So, no civil cases. He can't bring anything. He can intimidate people. He can send emails. He can get his lawyers to go and send whatever cease and desist or whatever horrible, letters that they do. But the thing is that the best advice I can give you for that, by the way, just because of the process, again, I'm not legally trained, but is to ignore them, because the only way that they can civilly convict you in this country is if they walk into the high court with their lawyers as a claimant and physically be there to sue you in a final court hearing, and they can't do that. So I don't know why they keep pretending that they can intimidate the masses. But anyway, I'll leave you to it, Crayons. Thank you so much for everything you're doing, and thank you for your time, and thanks for listening.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, and thanks for the question. Yeah, these guys, they do not want to go to trial. They listen. I've said this before, but they are going to use everything they have to stop going to trial. And I strongly believe, based on conversations I've had, and based on their so after Andrew found out that he was being investigated for human trafficking, and let me just back up for a little bit. Uh, a lot of people don't know one of their accomplices, Luana Radu, used to be a police officer in Romania. When they were raided in April 2022, she started illegally accessing the police database and keeping tabs on the investigation. So Andrew found out and Tristan found out that they were under investigation for all of these crimes before they actually uh, technically found out that they were under investigation for all these crimes, because their accomplice, a former police officer, was illegally accessing the database and keeping them up to date. They had all of the information. So when that happened, that's when Andrew started. He went on this massive podcast interview talking about, oh, there's 3 stages. First, they're going to cancel you. Then they're going to jail you for no reason. They can throw you in jail for no reason. Then they're going to kill you. Then they're going to assassinate me. So what I believe is going to happen, technically he started that after he got canceled. So he found out he was under investigation. Then he started getting canceled on social media. Then he went on a podcast tour. So he keeps saying things like, oh, I'm on my last life. And Tristan has made several posts saying that they're going to kill him recently. So I believe that they're going to stage a fake assassination attempt. And as crazy as that sounds, I strongly believe they're going to stage a fake assassination. I mean, it could just be something like somebody drives by and shoots up their house. Then they can start crying to the US, not the UK, because the UK is going to prosecute them. They can start crying to the US saying that our lives are in danger. Please get us out of Romania. Please help us. We're American citizens who are under threat. Our lives are in danger in Romania. Romania cannot protect us. That's going to be a move. People laugh at that, but wait and see. They're going to pull something like that, guaranteed.
Wouldn't just putting them in the Romanian jail protect them then?
They could put them in solitary confinement, and I hope that's the backfire that happens. That would be glorious, wouldn't it? Both of them end up in solitary confinement in one of the worst prisons in Romania. Like everything these guys do backfires. Everything. So the US isn't going to help them. They're going to try. They're going to try to get help, but the US isn't going to help them because Romania can put them in protective custody. And that's exactly what will happen. But they're going to try it, though. They're absolutely going to try it. Pax put his hand up when I was predicting how long this is going to take. He's Romanian. Pax, what's your take on that? What do you think?
You are absolutely right. I raised my hand because I wanted to add something about the decision of the judges to send back the indictment to be rewritten. And I would like to explain a little bit the timeline of all this story and what actually it happened in the court. So as you know, it started the indictment. It was filled up and sent to the courts for the preliminary chamber proceedings on June 23rd last year. And the last court ruling from the preliminary chambers, it was given on April 26th this year. So almost 1 year the case stood in the preliminary chamber proceedings. But they appealed that decision for starting the trial. And unfortunately, here where it comes the problem of the Romanian judicial system, unfortunately, the Court of Appeal scheduled the first hearing of the appeal just in October, the 15th of October this year. So they stood without having any kind of court hearings from April 26th till October, 15th of October this year. And on on 19th of November, they came with this blow decision where they are asking the prosecutors to rewrite the indictment in 5 days. And the prosecutors actually they argued that that the fact that rewriting the indictment is not such an easy process. If they will send back the indictment, they will reset the entire preliminary chamber proceedings. So this is I'm not very happy with the decision took by the Court of Appeal, because they reset at this preliminary chambers proceedings. So what means by reset? That means that when it will be re-indicted, there will be a new judge for the preliminary chambers, and the defendants can raise up again the same problems which they previously raised during the last year of preliminary chamber proceedings. So in this case, the judges haven't took a decision to put trust in the Romanian judicial system. Actually, there is a press article about how these preliminary chambers proceedings are affecting negatively in the public opinion the judicial system in Romania. And unfortunately, the judges from the Court of Appeal, by returning that indictment, have done exactly this, because it's prolonging this case with at least another 1 year before we have a decision for to start the trial. So I'm not very happy with the decision of the judge of Court of Appeal, and I think sometimes the judges should look to the public interest also when they are giving these kind of decisions.
Pax, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't the maximum amount of time someone can be held under a preventive measure 5 years? Do I remember that correctly?
Yes, they can keep them after the indictment is sent to the preliminary chamber. They can keep them up to 5 years in preventative arrest, home, or the detention. I don't think that they'll reach 5 years, because as you know, all the time, the judges, when are taking a decision of keeping them in preventative measures, they will look how they behave if they've tried to, to flee, or they've tried to contact the victims, and so on and so on. And all the time, also, they have to look for their human rights. So they don't want to keep them under preventative measures without a conviction, because it's breaking their human rights. After this 180 days, if the prosecutors are not indicting them, they will go automatically, they will go in under judicial control, and it will be harder to rearrest them during the preliminary chamber proceedings. That is why usually the prosecutors will do the indictment immediately before those 180 days are expiring, so they could prolong the arrest during the preliminary chambers proceedings. So they will maintain they will maintain the current state, or will give a lesser state. You will not see that they are giving a worse state for the defendants, unless they didn't behave properly.
Yeah, and that's one of the things what Pax was saying about their preventive measure. A lot of people say, well, how come, and this is before Andrew went on house arrest. I'm going to remove some of these speakers. Hang on here. How come Andrew, or how come things were getting better for them? How did they go from jail to house arrest to judicial control, to where they could travel first within their city, then it was relaxed and they could travel within Romania? It's because what Pax was saying, the way Romanian law is set up under preventive measures, and I've got the actual law in my timeline as well that you can search for, is that when they put you under preventive measure, if you have not been indicted yet, it's reviewed every 30 days. If you've been indicted, it's reviewed every 60 days. So people keep saying, well, the Tates keep going to court and they keep winning, or whatever happened. No, their preventive measures keep getting reviewed. And then if they don't agree with the preventive measure, let's say the judge says, no, you're going to stay under house arrest, and Tristan, you're going to stay under judicial control. And then the brothers can appeal that decision, which means they go to court again. So that's how that works. But to what Pax was saying, unless they violate their terms of the preventive measures, or unless they commit more crime, they're always going to either maintain the existing controls, or they're going to relax the controls. And what happens, this has happened previously when they went uh, from jail to house arrest. They were like, the judge threw it out. We win, a victory. And then when they went from house arrest to judicial control, the judge looked at the indictment and threw it out, said it was garbage. They claim those as victories, but the way Romanian law is written, they have to either maintain them or relax them. And most of the time they get relaxed unless there's a very specific reason why they have to maintain them. Now, they're going to readjust their preventive measures once the new indictment comes. Andrew may or may not remain on house arrest. We don't know yet. He could remain on house arrest due to the severity of the crimes that he's been charged with due to minors, or they might relax it for him if he's behaved and put him under judicial control with him and Tristan, and they might be able to travel within their city, or they might be able to travel within the entire country of Romania. That's not a victory. That's just procedure with how Romania does things. Okay, I want to try to get to some hands here. Quickly, Adam, you had your hand up. You go.
Thanks, Crayons. 2 points. One, I was thinking while Pax was talking that these guys probably don't want to go to Rahova. So as far as trying to push this off and drag it out as long as possible, from what I've researched a little bit about Rahova, it's something that they would probably rather avoid. That's the one point I wanted to make. And the other point was, when the rest of the world catches up to this information, what the heck are all these so-called right-wing influencers or thought leaders gonna say? Like, there's gonna be so much egg on so many people's faces, so many people that carried water for these jerks, and like, what the heck are they going to do to defend these guys? I'm so confused about it. Like, we have all these high hopes and high expectations for guys like Elon Musk, guys like Alex Jones or Cernovich, or all these so-called right-wing thought leaders, and like, how stupid are these guys going to look that what they missed this? You know, what do you
Well,
guys
I can
think?
tell you. I'll tell you right
They
now
will
what's going to
delete
happen.
everything. They will delete everything and act like they never touched it.
Yeah, it's going to be a combination of that. You're going to have some of them who are going to delete everything or ignore it and never address it again. Now, I don't want to get political here because I don't care about US politics. So don't take this as me being a Trump or whatever. Like, I don't give a fuck about US politics. I'm not in the US. But look at what happened to Trump. He was convicted on 30 something felonies or whatever. It doesn't matter if he did it or not. I'm just addressing how people are handling it. They're calling it lawfare. They're saying it's unfair. Now, I don't know if it is or not. I'm not following it, and I honestly don't care. But I'm addressing this from how his supporters are handling it. It's lawfare, it's bogus, they're trumped up charges or whatever. That's exactly how those who don't delete, that's how they're going to handle it for the Tates. They're going to say, well, this is just proof that it's a matrix attack. It's lawfare. He was clearly set up. They didn't want him to become the PM of the UK, of England, whatever he's running for. They didn't want him to rise to power. That's why they imprisoned him. They're going to come up with all of these excuses to protect these guys. But like what Bitch Evaporated said, half of them are going to delete and pretend that it didn't happen. The other half are going to double down and go to bat for them and say they were set up. Just like you see the support for Trump in the United States. And again, I don't know if he did it or not. I don't care. I'm not there. But that's the sort of thing that happens. They're going to circle the wagons, and the ones that are going to ride or die for him, they're going to keep riding for them, and they're going to keep lying for them through the entire thing. And they're going to say it's an injustice. They're going to say that they was illegally charged, their rights were violated. And back to the original question, I think HC asked this. So once they actually get to trial, and we didn't even get to this point, once they get to trial, we've had several people say, one, especially a Romanian journalist who covers this, says that these trials can easily last a year. But here's the thing, whatever the trial decision is, it can be appealed twice by both sides. So if the brothers are convicted, they can appeal that decision twice. It can go to it goes to the appellate judges where there's two judges. And if they can't come to a decision, they can appeal again and it goes to three judges. So they can have two appeals on that. And DCOT can also appeal. So whenever the trial ends, you're probably going to get two appeals, which is going to drag this out even longer. And it's my understanding that they can't actually be punished unless there's a final judicial decision. So these guys are going to run wild in Romania. They're going to keep pumping their coins. They're going to keep driving people into their online university. Look, these guys are masters at making money. That's what they do. And all of this stuff is to protect their image and to keep making money, to keep driving people into the war room, which is $8,000 to join. to keep driving young men into their online school, which is $49 a month, to keep driving people to invest in their various crypto coins and all the other things that they've got going on. They are stacking their cash, number one, because these legal fees are stacking up fast around the world. And number two, they're going to want a nest egg for when they get out of prison. These guys know what they did. They know what they're up against. They know how many decades in prison they are facing. And they're going to want to live a very comfortable life if they survive prison. And I don't blame them. I would too. All right, let's
Well,
move
I
to some
can
more
I
hands.
can
Go ahead.
so
Go ahead.
I can tell you how it's going to go with the right wing though, because especially with crimes against minors, because I've already been involved with somebody that's high profile on the right and been involved with something that and taken one of their people down. They'll just pretend like nothing ever happened. None of them will answer for it. And it being one of their friends, none of them will answer for it. One or two of them might have a comment on it and say, "Oh, this is disgusting. You know, we don't stand for this." All the other ones will completely ignore it. If you make a comment on their feed, like if they have a picture with him or something like that, they will absolutely block it. They'll block the comments, any comments of anybody making a comment. Um, and they will completely ignore it. They will delete everything off of their feed that has to do with them once the verdict comes down. And they will pretend like it never even happened. They never had a friendship with them. And I mean, it'll be like that person never existed. And they'll probably still talk to them behind the scenes, but it'll be like that person never ever existed, that there's a big black hole of them in their lives. And that's it. And
Yeah,
they'll wash their hands of it.
all of the people who are taking pictures of him and traveling to Romania to interview him, those are going to become the pictures that you see now with Jeffrey Epstein. Like, or here's Elon Musk with Ghislaine Maxwell. Here's whatever Trump with Epstein, or whatever this person with Epstein, or here's Elon Musk with P Diddy. Like the pictures with Tate that people are doing now are going to become those in the future. Here's this person with P. Diddy. Here's this person with Epstein. Here's this person with Andrew Tate. Here's this person with Keith Raniere from the Nexum cult. Like that's exactly what it's going to be. So whenever I see these people going to Romania, I might post something and just let them know what they're getting into, because they really don't know. But I'm looking forward to that blowing up in their face, because I know what's coming. Like I
Yeah, they
know what
do.
these.
They do not care. They do not care about the victims.
Nope.
They did not care about the victims back then when they were warned. People like the person that I assisted with busting, Nick Fuentes, was warned, and he brought him into his inner circle. He was warned multiple times over and over and over again. Nick, I mean, we had transcripts of texts where he was warned, and he did absolutely nothing. He pretty much served his base up to this person who was preying on minors, and he did absolutely nothing because Nick Fuentes wanted to meet Kanye so bad. I mean, it's total greed is all it is. It's money, it's power. They don't care as long as they're getting the money and power. They don't care if the minors are getting hurt. They don't care if the women are getting hurt. They care about money and power and influence. That's all they care about. And it's not just right wing. It's people on left too. People on left would do this too. It's money and power and greed. It's an influencer thing. We have to, but I police my own side. I'm right wing. I police my own side. I'm going to police my own side because it is the right thing to do. Somebody has to do it. And I'm going to be that person. I'm going to do
I'm
the
gonna
right thing. This is just what I do. It's just the right thing to do. And somebody has to do it on the right, and it's always going to be me, and I'm going to always call us out. People have called me liberal for a long time, but I've voted Republican my entire life, and somebody on the right has to call it out, and it's going to be me. So
Well, speaking of these people, and you brought up the minors, we haven't touched on the possibility of these guys going to prison in the United States yet. For those of you who don't know, the United States has extraterritorial laws, which means that they are laws that travel with their citizens around the world. And the brothers are dual citizens, and one of their citizenships is the United States. And these laws are to protect minors abroad. They have specific laws for having sex with minors abroad and for trafficking minors abroad. And because it's extraterritorial law and it's not for a particular state, because every state in the United States has a different age of consent, they set a federal age at 18 years old. So any American citizen who is caught having sex with someone under the age of 18 abroad, which Andrew has already, that's part of his case now as a 15-year-old, they can also be prosecuted in the United States for crimes against minors abroad. And I think that carries a mandatory 10-year sentence. They have an
We also
additional
have
one for trafficking minors abroad. Go
we
ahead.
we also have a federal code that you can't entice minors via the internet under the age of 18. There's a federal code on that. You can't entice them via the internet, via the mail, via telephone, that you can't entice minors under the age of 18. There's actually a federal code on that as well.
Yeah, so we might see a scenario where whenever Romania is finished or whenever the UK is finished, the UK or the USA could come for their pound of flesh. One, for the minors, having sex with minors abroad. Number two, trafficking minors abroad. But the UK said during the civil tax evasion case in the UK, they said through their investigation, they found that the brothers have not paid any taxes to any country in the world. And now Romania is also going to prosecute them for tax fraud as well, claiming they didn't pay taxes there. So if they're not paying taxes in Romania or in the UK, and the UK says they didn't pay in any country, that means the United States is going to come for their pound of flesh too. So they might be facing tax evasion charges in the US, and they're probably going to face crimes against minors in the US too. So this could be a scenario where the United States has options. They could choose to prosecute them for the minors, or they could be happy with whatever happens in Romania and just let Romania handle it. Or if Romania bungles this and fumbles the case, then the US could step up and say, "We got this." So look, if you're a Tate fan, if you're a Tate fan, I can't stress enough to you how much trouble these guys are in. And I know they have convinced you that there are no victims and the case was dismissed, which is not true. By the way, this entire space is recorded. You can go back and listen to the beginning. I explain all of this stuff. These guys are in so much trouble in multiple countries. I can't even imagine these guys get much sleep at night. I mean, they're facing decades in Romania, potential life sentences in the UK, and a minimum of 10 years in the United States if the United States comes up. Like, these guys are in so much trouble.
One thing to remember too, we were talking about Elon Musk earlier, and people were talking about his retweeting and things like that, and they were like, well, at least he retweeted the grooming gang victim. We have to remember that when people use the retweet feature, it's not always in support.
Valid.
That that
Valid. Yeah,
that could have been a retweet in harassment, and we have no
absolutely.
idea if that's what that was. So it's not always a retweet in support. When I retweet somebody, it's not always in support.
Yeah. Yeah, I do the same thing. I
So
retweet sometimes just to bring attention, like, hey, go get this guy.
yeah. So
Yeah. Look,
I do
we
the
have
same
no
thing.
idea we have no idea what that retweet was about, and I've seen no support for any of the victims out of him. So I don't know what his retweet was about. So take any retweets out of him with a grain of salt.
yeah, if you go to Elon Musk's page and you go to the search bar and you search for at Cobra Tate or at Tate the Talisman, he has conversations with these guys. Like, he's part of their, like, he's in that circle of conversations. So I look, I don't want to. I'll say this, and I made a post about this before. I never gave Elon Musk too much attention. I never looked into it. I didn't really care. I just heard news bites. Oh, this guy's trying to get us to Mars. He's doing, electric cars. And I was like, oh, that's cool. That's really cool. Somebody's trying to get us off the planet. I support that or whatever. I thought that's really cool. Like, he's probably a smart guy. He took over X, and the stuff that I'm seeing him post and retweet and the misinformation that he continually falls for And now I see him, engaging with the Tate brothers, and I'm just like, holy shit, what is this guy doing? Like,
I was
I
a
like,
Exactly.
fan, and I was a
and
fan, and I'm a little sick of it. I
yeah,
mean, I'm a little sick to my stomach now.
yeah, and here's what I think about this. So again, I'm not an Elon Musk fan, so an expert. So don't, I'm not. This isn't a hill I'm going to die on. But just from an outsider looking in, if you're trying to do, and I know there's arguments saying that we're never getting to Mars or whatever, but let's say there's a chance. If your goal is to get us off the planet and to make these better cars and to do the Starlink and the Neuralink for the brains and stuff, which I think is awesome if you can do it, right? I think that's great if you can do it. But why are you taking your eye off the ball and getting caught up in all of this other nonsense that's going to distract you from your mission? That's the way I see Elon Musk right now. Like, if there's the possibility that any of these grand things that he's doing could actually succeed at scale, why in the world are you taking your eye off the ball, man? Like, if you've gotten this far, why are you getting distracted? Why are you getting involved with politics? Why are you doing, dude, keep your eye on the ball. That would be my message to Elon. Stop falling for all this stupid stuff. Keep your eye on the ball and become the dude that betters humanity, and not the dude who people say like, oh yeah, this guy's a fucking idiot. Like, this guy's an idiot. How did he get this far?
Crayons,
So that's
do
my
you
thought.
think that this is a distraction technique for something that we're not actually supposed to be watching right now, or do you think this is complete ignorance? Because I'm also torn. I
Yeah.
spoke about it earlier, and I can't accept as human beings that anybody could be this stupid. I mean, it is
I,
saturated left to right about Andrew Tate and his brothers and everything else.
I think
I'm
he's gotten into
torn.
politics, and I think that
I,
he's completely floundering, honestly.
look. There's no question that he's brilliant for some things. I mean, everybody's like that. Everyone in here is great at something. You're great at something. You're knowledgeable about something. Elon is obviously incredibly knowledgeable at the things that he has built these businesses on. He's taken incredible risk. Obviously, he bought a lot of these companies, from what I understand. Again, I'm not an Elon expert, so don't crucify me on this. But he's in that position because he knows how to do those things. But as Bitch Evaporate said, he's just slandering around here in politics and making an ass of himself. So I think he's moving into territory where he technically shouldn't belong. The saying, stay in your lane. I would love to see him stay in his lane and do things that he's really good at. Even if that really good just means that he's able to delegate people to do the things for him. I think that, go do that stuff, Elon. Go do that shit. Stay out of the shit that you don't where you don't belong. But to your question, is there something else going on that we're being distracted on? Maybe. I don't put anything past anyone at this point. It could be a distraction. It could be that in his personal life, he's just incredibly gullible. I know his own father said, in a quote in a video, that when he was young, they thought he was retarded, which is obviously he had some level of autism. He had some level of autism, and they just weren't able to detect it back then. But if he's on the spectrum, then that makes even more sense that he's able to do certain extraordinary things, but be completely clueless about other things. So again, I'm not an Elon Musk expert. I don't feel comfortable going into that space, but that's just as an outsider looking in. That's my opinion. Adam, you had something to add to that?
Did I?
I don't know. You were laughing. I don't know. Maybe I had something wrong. I don't know. I'm
uh,
not an Elon dude.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, you were going on about keep your eye on the ball. This is a ball. That's a ball. What if it's not a ball? What if it's flat?
There you go. Yeah, that's right. You're one of those guys. That's right. Yeah,
I am
yeah,
totally one of those guys. But
yeah. I've seen that. Yeah.
on the point of a distraction, I'll just say to whoever brought that up, if Andrew Tate and Tristan Tate are a distraction from something, then they are, distraction incorporated professionalists. They are the peak distractionists, because whatever is, I mean, they're not just like, their crimes are real. The rape victims are real. This is not a distraction in a way that is not a completely real thing. And Crayons and everyone here on the panel can testify to that. And his number is up. He's going down. It's just a matter of time.
Yeah, valid. And let me say this. I just brought some more speakers up and give people the stage here. But I just want to say this because I I do these spaces and people are sending me hate DMs and stuff like that. The fans absolutely hate me. I wish that we didn't have to do this. And I've said this before, I wish that when the Tate brothers were charged, they would have done what every normal person would have done and said, we categorically deny all of these charges and we will prove our innocence in court. And then that was the end of it. And we didn't. Like, look at Russell Brand. Maybe he did it, maybe he didn't do it, I don't know, but he's not going on and on and on. He's not attacking the victims, he's not smearing anybody, he's not suing the victim. He said, I didn't do it, I'm going to see my day in court, whatever. And then nobody's really going at him too hard about it. But because the Tate brothers have attacked their victims, they've smeared their victims, they've pushed massive amounts of misinformation and disinformation out there, and they have the hearts and mind of so many young men that they're influencing, who they're leading to believe that it's okay to exploit women. It's okay to put these women on webcam and OnlyFans and take all their money. We're going to sell a course to teach you how to do it. Like, because of that, we have to put this information out there. And I wish we didn't. There's a million other things I wish I could be doing right now rather than like reading court documents about Andrew Tate. But because they push this out there, this is the reaction to their negativity, to their lies, to their manipulation. So I just wanted to add that.
And then also I just wanted to add something about detention, the preventive measures. The judge considers whether or not they are a flight risk, a danger to society, whether they will tamper with the investigation, and what measure would be sufficient to keep them at whatever point of the investigation. So if you observe the Tates, 2023, it started with detention because per the indictment, they had a high flight risk because of their multiple passports and connections. Then as time went on, their measures continued to relax. They went on house arrest and then judicial control. And then by the time they were on judicial control, the indictment was done and it was just left for the preliminary chamber process. So at that point, it wasn't necessary to keep them under tight restrictions. They could continue their lives and whatever they wanted to do. And then at the same time, attend court hearings, provided that they stuck to and obeyed the restrictions. And then I also find it strange that the Tates are claiming US citizenship in 2025 so hard, because since they became famous, they were always bashing the US and the West about how corrupt and how degenerate that society has become. Like sometimes I wonder, like the way they are asking the US for help, when was the last time they paid taxes to the IRS? Like I just want to know, when was the last time they did that? Because it's crazy. You are asking for help from a country who you never claimed, and you are now trying to claim them when you've done nothing to benefit them. But these are just the little concerns I have.
Thank you.
Thank you
Iris.
very much.
Thank you, Iris. I'm going to go ahead and move you down now. Thanks for sharing. Lucy, you were next. Where did Lucy go?
Hey, you're right. Can you
Hey,
hear
there
me
you are.
okay?
Loud and clear. How you doing?
Nice to see you. Yeah, good, thank you. I'll try and keep it short, but just back on the subject of Elon as well. I think you're absolutely right. I think what might have happened with Elon is, because he wasn't into all this anti-woke stuff until fairly recently. And I think what people tend to do is when they realize that some of these characters aren't maybe as bad as the media have been portraying them out to be, is there's kind of a bit of an elastic band effect where they think, not only are they not evil, but they're actually a hero. So I think Elon is kind of in the throes of this sort of red pill type, realization of, all of these controversial figures, we owe them and we need to, give them their voices and their platforms back. And that would all be kind of fine. But then he obviously doesn't know the backstory and the stuff behind the scenes and the reasons why, why maybe they're not exactly a hero either. And that sometimes they can exploit that hero status for nefarious ends or for selfish ends. And I think there's almost this kind of juvenile idea of almost like the Power Rangers. We're all going to get together and we're going to fight the woke mind virus together. A little bit of that. And it just seems to be almost like he's having a teenage kind of coming of age kind of story there. But what he needs to realize, as you said, is this is beneath him. Andrew Tate is beneath him. Andrew Tate is riding on his coattails, not the other way around. He should not be giving Andrew Tate the time of day. And exactly what's been said before, it's actually it is dangerous when you have the ear of not only President Trump, but then also over here in the UK, it's Reform. You know, he is tying himself to pretty much the only party that actually can push back against some of these, you know, things like grooming gangs and the free speech stuff. And he is actually potentially going to cause damage to my country, to the States, maybe even to Germany, by giving them an open goal, by making this about Andrew Tate. So he really needs to, and I really do hope that Trump's lot advise him on this as well, that this really is just a big swing in the wrong direction, and he doesn't need Andrew Tate, you know, and Andrew Tate is using him and he's dragging him down into this muck of being kind of like the pro misogyny party or something. It's just unnecessary. So yeah, I hope that Elon, I hope that it's getting in, but I just feel like that some of the people around, you know, you've got these people that are very happy to have Elon's attention, but that doesn't mean they're giving him good advice. So I just hope that people do step in and yeah, just warn him, like, Andrew Tate is not the hill that you want to die on. And in my country, especially, I'm like, please stop, you know, just please stop, because I really want to actually help victims too. And Andrew Tate is not the guy, you know. So that's all I had to say.
Thank you. I agree 100% with all of that. Yeah, hopefully he's going to come to his senses, or somebody's going to get his ear and be like, "Yeah, you might want to have a look at this stuff. He's not who you think he is." And yeah, it's it's I call it sad. It's disturbing to watch somebody with that amount of followers and reach boost someone who is being criminally prosecuted for trafficking minors and raping minors and human trafficking and rape. Like, just like, man, what are you doing? You know, like, just like, how about don't do anything? Like you don't have to have an opinion, but just don't do anything. How about that? Don't boost them, at least, you know? Okay, total disclosure, you're up, and after total disclosure, we're gonna go Shy. Total disclosure, how you doing? Welcome.
Hey man, how you doing? I'm fine, thank you.
Great. What's
I'm
happening?
going to try to make it short and sweet, as I know time is limited. Greetings from Portugal. I think it's very, very nefarious that people are either turning a blind eye on purpose or just blatantly involved in the same scams, crimes that the Tate brothers are involved in, because it's 2025. You have been exposed in this for what, almost 2 years? And for me, the evidence of the crimes of these two brothers are magnanimous, not only going through to sex crimes, but also scams using crypto, rug and pulls. They basically scam all their followers, and they're just basically posers. Everything they are, or they pretend to be, is a fraud. And for young men to think that this is an example to follow, it's a complete disgrace. These rings, these human trafficking rings, are everywhere in the States and everywhere in Europe. I myself dismantled a ring, a very similar ring here in Portugal a couple of years ago, because someone I care about was being victimized and stalked by these people. The lover boy method, it's something that has been popularized for years. This is not new. This has been happening for 10, 20 years, perhaps even before the internet, although I cannot speak for that. But in regards to the Tate brothers, I think they're finished. I think they're just trying to. These are the last kicks of a drowned man. He knows he's going to jail somehow. He's not going to have a political career. Clearly, they moved to Romania for two main reasons. The main reason being that over there we all know, it's a human trafficking hotbed, and the age of consent happens to be 16, which is perfect for them, I guess, because they like 15-year-olds. The other reason is for him to be able to pretend that he's a billionaire, because obviously the cost of life over there is way cheaper than in England or in the States. And over there, he can pretend that he owns 30 cars, a mansion, which is actually a warehouse that he transformed 9 years ago. So, I'll leave it at that. And again, I appreciate everything you're doing.
Let's go to Shy next.
Hello. Hi, Cray Cray. Hi, Gadget. Hi, Paxrax and the room. A couple of things, really. Number one, I understand that they just put out another coin. He's made it explode and then plummet. Is that true?
They released a new meme coin based on his political party, which isn't registered, and the application
Right.
hasn't even been filed yet. But it's called Bruv, and it went up and they rugged it, but it's still going. Like
And is
here's
it
the
all
thing.
right for them? Is there a federal people that look at that lot and do anything, or is that the reason about it not being policed? So there you go.
I don't know in the US how I know some people have had some issues with that. I know the Haktua girl, I think, is under some level of investigation for the stuff that happened with her
Right.
scam of a coin. I don't know. I don't know how that's handled, but one thing about Andrew Tate is that he's been quoted several times as saying everything is a sell. Everything he
Yes.
does is a sell. Everything he
Absolutely.
does is a sell. He's trying, like literally everything he says, everything he does, everything he puts out there, everything is a sell.
Just can I jump in on the shitcoin 50
Yeah.
crowns?
Go ahead, Gadget.
Yeah,
I,
I was
go
following
ahead.
that and getting a bit of a help with some people that are more crypto savvy than me. But yeah, you're right, Shy. It fully pumped and dumped, as they say. And a name that I just want to get out there is Issa the Cooker. Is the account? They call him Issa? This is Tate's right hand man when it comes to all these crypto scams. He can be seen pumping that coin hashtag bruv, $sign bruv. He was doing it on Telegram. He was doing it on X. I did a post about it and I tagged, pointed out that he was involved as an admin in the Telegram group. And this guy left a kind of a sarcastic reply to me. And then I did another post kind of showing more clearly that he's involved and he's put his account on private since I did a post. So I think he knows I'm onto him, and if he thinks I'm onto him, he's right. So this guy is just think of the Andrew Tate of the crypto scammers as far as self snitching, and
Right.
yeah, watch this space.
And there is that thing I just want to say before I go. Last thing, the one thing I adore about these kind of criminals is they can't help bragging about how stupid they are, and then that information is always then brought back to bite them firmly in the arse, which gives me the stomaching giggles. Honest to God, I didn't stop giggling all last week when I saw what he did. So I'll go away. Thank you. I'll yield.
Thank you, Shy. Speaking of dumb criminals, like we brought up before, that Andrew Tate's jail calls are recorded, and I don't know if he was just desperate or his narcissism got the best of him or he didn't know his jail calls were being recorded. I mean, my youngest son knows that jail calls are recorded. Like I don't know how you could be in that situation and not know that everything you say on a call not to your attorney is going to be recorded. And during that time, through his recorded calls, he got caught trying to intimidate two of the victims into withdrawing their statements from the authorities, threatening them. So that's part of his witness tampering charge as well. So two of them, he got caught there on recorded jail calls. He got caught, which is technically not, I mean, he wasn't supposed to contact his cousin Luke. So him contacting his cousin Luke through his assistant through a call was technically a violation of the preventive measures. And that may have been used against him to actually extend their time in jail. And technically, he wasn't supposed to have any contact or influence over any of the victims, but he was contacting his cousin Luke and telling these victims to make videos in his defense and had these people make videos in defense. They caught him doing that. And then he was caught trying to bribe two Romanian politicians to helping them, to essentially to get them out of jail. He would make sure that they won elections or whatever. And his luck, I mean, he got caught doing that too. And as luck would have it, that's the same politician who recently came out that Mario in the fall shared a video where that politician is now saying that Andrew Tate's charges are fake or whatever. So like all of this stuff got recorded on jail phone calls as part of the case, as part of the case files. The media got their hands on it. We've got some of the transcripts. Like when you talk about stupid, um, imagine getting caught breaking the law on recorded jail calls and then having the audacity to tell the world that you didn't do it. Like, I mean, it's just, it's, yeah, it's something else. Okay, we're going to keep moving, so I'm going to close this down. Gadget, take us home.
Hey, Crayons. Hey, everyone. Yeah, I just wanted to do a quick, brief UK civil case update. So if everyone looks up in the nest on the far left, I shared a fundraiser. So this is for Crowns has touched on this, that I think the public doesn't realize how much trouble Andrew Tate is in the UK as well as Romania. So this is for 4 women in the UK that are suing him civilly for just horrific alleged crimes. So rape, horrific assaults, strangulation to the point of injuries with blood vessels bursting in eyes. Really sick stuff. Important point is this is separate to the case that was brought in last March that they got granted extradition to the UK after the Romanian case. Completely different women, different area. Just a quick update as far as the case. So there's going to be the next sort of big news will be in April. But what I can say is that the lawyers are very, very confident this is going to go all the way to trial. And as far as news to share, I can't really share yet. But as far as just really embarrassing proof of how much of a liar Andrew is, I'm going to have something really fun to share soon, but I just need to get it prepared and maybe redact some things I want to redact. But as far as showing how what he says to his fans and publicly is very, very, very different to what is forced to say in a courtroom, in a court setting. It's going to be really embarrassing. So I'm going to make him look like an absolute clown in the next few days. Um, but apart from that, the girls are the women are crowdfunding, one for this civil case, two because their lawyers are campaigning to get the criminal case that was completely botched initially reopened and reworked so that they can get Tate criminally prosecuted for these crimes as well as the other women in the UK. And also the law firm there is helping as far as Tate's influence on young men. They've done some work free of charge for that. They've done some helped me with some things on that front as well without any charge. So they're doing a lot of work. So if everyone can please share that link. Awareness is just really important because this is the court process is really slow. So I want to make sure everyone's aware that this case is still very much progressing, ongoing, and the ladies need help. So if everyone can please share the link, share the fundraiser, not necessarily my post, if you want to do your own post and put a spin on it. And if you can donate even something really small, it literally all adds up. Literally, we go through sometimes periods of lots of really small donations that make a big difference. So, but yeah, like awareness though, just keep this in mind. You'll see myself and others posting about this case. Please help share that and post yourself just to make sure everyone and the public is as aware as possible that, as Crowns has alluded to, these guys are in a world of trouble in Romania, in the UK, and likely in the US as well. So that's pretty much it. Thanks, Crowns, for letting me just share that.
Thanks, Gadget. Appreciate it. Sorry to make you wait so long. Pax, you had your hand up when Gadget was speaking, so I'm going to let you wrap this up. Go ahead, Pax. Bring it home.
Yeah, I would like to explain a little bit the case in UK. If the people are not aware, the UK had a systemic problem in prosecuting rape and sexual abuse. So, and fortunately for the Tates, this case it was investigated by at the peak of this systemic problem in UK in prosecuting this kind of cases. And also, you have to add to this that actually they ran away from UK, making quite hard for the prosecutors to prosecute their case. And unfortunately, the decision of Crown Prosecution Service it was not to prosecute them. And in UK, compared with Romania, you cannot appeal the decision of not prosecuting in the front of the judges. So this is we have this civil case because at the moment this is the only way for the victims to bring in front of the judge the Tates. So this case, it's a civil case. It's important because it is the only way at the moment to bring the Tates in this UK case, to bring them in front of the judge. So it's not about compensation. If is more like about bringing in front of the judges the Tates, because unfortunately UK had a systemic problem which failed so many victims of sexual assaults and rapes, and this is why we have currently those scandals with the grooming gangs and so on and so on. And the Tate had the luck to have investigated their case at the peak of this systemic problem. So please consider to donate, because at the moment, for those victims, this is the only way at the moment to bring the Tates in front of the judges.
Thank you for adding that, Pax. I want to let everyone know that this space was recorded, so if you missed the beginning of this space, you can go back and listen to it. I do a full breakdown of all of the cases, all of the updates, all the things that are going on, why it wasn't dismissed. Andrew's Tate case was not dismissed. And it's just wild to me that they've said multiple times at various stages that the case is dismissed, and people keep believing them over and over. This time it's really dismissed. They threw it out this time. Like, come on, guys. I think this is the third or fourth time they've claimed that the case is dismissed. It has not been dismissed. The case was sent back to the prosecutor to rewrite the indictment to specifically correct 3 procedural errors, 3 irregularities that I talked about in detail at the beginning of this space. And what we're likely going to see is the rejoining of the 2 cases. You're going to take the first case and the second case, and the prosecutor is probably going to rejoin them because it was originally one large case, and they disjoined them early on because DCOT only had 180 days to indict them early on. So I want to thank everybody. Thank the co-hosts for holding the space down. We had some great conversation, great questions today. If I didn't get to you, we still have a lot of people waiting to get in, but I do have to shut the space down. We will hold another space as soon as we have a major update or there's something that we need to address.
Otherwise, have a great weekend wherever you're at in the world.
See you, mate.